Well, a lot of people, I tell this story to people that it happened and say, "What are your thoughts?" And they're like, "Is she still alive?" And I'm like, "Yeah, she survived that. She's supposed to be here." That's all I can say is I think about this. I can't. I Yeah, I can't stop thinking about it. Okay, so talking to Sam, and a story has hit. It was on CBS News about a young girl. I think what was she like, 22?
Something like that, yeah.
Dog sitter walked into the home and had her face ripped off and her clothes ripped off, and I think 800 bites to her body.
Yeah,
Uh,
something like that. I watched the video.
yeah, it was pretty traumatic. I'll play parts of it here so people can get an idea. It's pretty graphic.
Good morning, Gail. First, a warning. Part of the story we're about to show you is hard to watch, may not be suitable for all children. But this is a story about what happened to 22-year-old Jacqueline Duran, a college student and an experienced dog sitter in North Texas. She was mauled by two dogs. We have never before seen video of her rescue, which saved her life, but not before the dogs changed her face forever. I want you to know we spent the last 2 months following this story, her recovery. She's got a long road ahead. But she said to us, I have a story to tell and I want people to hear it. And she hopes you'll listen. Jacqueline Duran's face was nearly erased 2 days before Christmas and 1 day before her 22nd birthday. It happened on a dog-sitting trip gone horrifically wrong in the Dallas, Texas suburb of Coppell.
I see her feet right there.
First responder body camera video shows the two dogs who attacked her holding the police at bay, leaving Jacqueline agonizing for help.
We can't make entry because of the dogs.
The dogs, in the instant after she opened the door, were not like the lovely dogs Jacqueline said she had met once before.
Ma'am, can you hear me? Are you the only one inside? Is the big dog right next to you?
Lucy, a German Shepherd mix, and Bender, a boxer pit bull, pinned her down and tore off her nose, ears, lips, and cheeks to the bone.
So the dogs dragged you from the front door to the living room?
Yes.
What do you remember about where they were attacking you?
My leg, my arm, my face the most. Especially when I felt the skin hanging from my face. I thought I was gonna die.
From the time police arrived, 37 minutes passed before first responders felt safe going in.
Let's go! Let's go!
A medic rescued Jacqueline and ran out with her. She was rushed to a trauma center in grave condition. She had lost 30% of the blood in her body. It was a blessing, really, that she was even found alive at all. When the dogs rushed her, the door was left open, and that triggered a security alarm at the home of Justin and Ashley Bishop.
Have you had any problems with dogs? Zero.
The Bishops told police the dogs came into their home from rescue organizations.
I have 3 kids, one's 3 years old. No history of violence, none.
But the words crazy dogs on a sign about a sleeping baby hanging on their front door is one indicator of negligence. That is according to a lawsuit filed by Chip Brooker, Jacqueline's attorney.
The warning on the front door to me, I think, suggests that the Bishops knew that both of these dogs had acted aggressively to people arriving at the front door.
You're trying to build this case of negligence. What do you have to prove that?
What we have to prove is an examination of the dogs that we did after this attack, which we believe shows that the dogs were dangerous and had vicious propensities.
The Bishops turned down a request by CBS News for an interview, but in a statement they said they were heartbroken about what happened. The police videos show how cautious officers were even when trying to contain the dogs, particularly Bender. Once at the hospital, emergency surgery lasted for 7 hours before Jacqueline's parents, John and Shirley Duran, heard from one of the doctors.
She had to be resuscitated on the trauma table.
Multiple times.
Describe for me the moment you first saw her after the attack.
I was just glad to see her alive. Her whole face was totally bandaged. They had her in an induced coma for over a week.
It must have been somewhat deceiving because the bandages really covered up the worst of it.
It did.
Exactly.
It really did.
I just kept telling her that she was a miracle and that she was going to be restored. She will be.
When we met Jacqueline 7 weeks after she had been in the hospital, doctors had grafted skin from her buttocks and her forehead to start the process of rebuilding her face.
I feel like I didn't ask for this, so I think that it's time to show who I am now, and I can't be scared of it.
What are you hoping to get across with this interview?
I want for dog owners to know their animals and be able to communicate with their sitters how they are.
These are the same dogs who you had met a week earlier that you said were lovely.
Yeah.
You know, lovely one week and killers the next. How do you square the two?
Honestly, I'm speechless. They don't change their attitude from the time that I meet them to the time that I go there for the first time.
Jacqueline was released from the hospital after 60 days. Leaving there was a brave and spirited 22-year-old woman, deserving of the applause that she got from the doctors and nurses. When she got home, first responders gave her a champion's welcome.
I really appreciate it.
Her dogs were even waiting, and so was her boyfriend.
I love you.
Jacqueline doesn't want to be seen as a victim, but rather an example. And that may be why she didn't hide the scars that showed the more than 800 bites on her body.
So when I first interviewed you, you could open your mouth about 5 millimeters.
Yes.
Now you're up to 21 millimeters.
Yes.
We've had the benefit of watching you heal over the course of a month, and it is notably different, better. Are you seeing that yourself?
Yeah, I am seeing.
And what does that do just for your own spirits?
I think it really lifts me up compared to where I was.
Yeah.
Because I just felt so helpless in the hospital. And being at home, I knew I was going to heal more here than I could at the hospital.
Therapy is a full-time job now. Her mouth is stretched 1 millimeter at a time so that she can eat more. Countless surgeries are to come.
When you hear 1 to 3 more years of surgeries, is that daunting for you?
It's not fun to think about, but I also think about how amazing the doctors are. And so I'm putting it in their hands to help me. Come on!
You should know that there's a lot of hope in Jacqueline and her family. In fact, in looking to the future, guess what? There is a place in her heart still to love dogs. She'd been dog sitting for 7 years and still dreams of working with animals.
The last we spoke, you mentioned maybe something involving animal welfare?
I was thinking dog training, because that's...
Dog training?
Yes. That's my dream, but I'm not sure where life is going to take me yet.
She has her senses now. She can walk, she can talk, she can smell, she can hear, and she can see. She's going to be fine, I think.
Hi. In addition to the love from her family, there is 24-year-old Nathan, who she has dated for 3 years. He just recovered from cancer. And when he was going through treatment, Jacqueline often drove him and stayed with him. Now,
I'm so grateful that I get the opportunity to show the same level of love and care that she showed me during that time. I'm glad that I get the chance to. And I'm glad that I get to be there for her.
Jacqueline told us she'd like to hear from the bishops. She has not. She said, David, I would like an apology. She says, I haven't even been paid in full for the service that I went there for. I should tell you that the bishops told us in their statement that they would never put anyone in harm's way, and a Texas judge ordered that both of the dogs be euthanized.
After watching the video, what were your observations?
Well, from watching the video, the first thing that went wrong was the assumption the dogs were friendly. Even though an owner introduces dogs to a person, that owner is there. So if I were to give you an example of how I train people to work in my kennel, it's several visits and several hours before they're allowed to be on their own with their dog, with the dogs.
Describe first to people that don't know, is you have security dogs that are... tell people about those dogs.
Well, they're dogs that were raised in homes where they were spoiled, so they have no respect for people. And we use them in our security dog program, and which time through training and proper environment management, they eventually get adopted back out in the homes, and they're perfectly fine with the understanding that they are a dog for protective purposes, which most dogs will do naturally anyway. The key here is not so much about the dogs mauling the person as it is an absolutely tragic event, but it's more so as to why and understanding why it happened. Although the dogs were introduced to this dog walker prior, but it was only one visit.
Yeah.
So let's break this down a little bit, and then I'll give you examples of my own dogs. Number one, there were two dogs in that home. And in most cases where there's two dogs in the home, the dogs are self-regulating. So there's no extensive training involved, and the dogs do their own thing. Number two, my guess is with all of this COVID stuff, there has been a lot of deliveries to the doors. And every time a person drops a package off and then leaves, it's no different of a form of training dogs to be guard dogs.
Yep.
This is typical of the same type of situation that you would train an attack dog for in what we call the agitation process. You can probably find some videos on YouTube that shows this.
And just play hand, put one up, make him dry, let and move. There. Boy. Good boy.
But so those photos I shared with you, the screenshots, which I'll play in this video.
Well, if you studied that video where the police were entering the house, and I caught it, which proves my point. I caught it in a flash, and I stopped it. When the pit bull was getting the catch noose put around him with a catch pole,
yeah,
he was by himself. Do you notice that he was not aggressive at all? He just stood there.
Maybe he was calculating?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Let's once he even had the noose on him, he squirmed a bit, but he really didn't put up that much of a fight.
Well, they had two. They had one on him already, and then they're putting a second one on him.
I've seen dogs, you put a catch pole on them, and they'll do anything to break it in half and kill you. That's not that dog. That dog just did what he does naturally.
Okay, because most people don't see that.
In direct training because of the door knockoffs and the drop-offs and all that, and then add a meek person that goes in there. I mean, I have to hand it to that girl that she's pretty well handling herself well for what happened to her.
Yep.
That has nothing to do with how the dogs would look at her as being.
Yeah. But whatever happened, it was I don't know if it was in the evening when dark, maybe she showed up on a dark front porch. I mean, I don't know, but whatever happened, these dogs got her, took her from the front of the house, dragged her all the way down the hallway, all the way in the great room, and they laid on the dog bed, shredding her. I mean,
like I said, she was squirming and screaming, which is rightfully so, and that just aggravates it more.
Well, there's just absolutely no way you wouldn't be able to do that. I don't know who.
There's no way after that happening to you, you're lucky to even just, of course.
Yeah.
Watch it, but that is what it is, right? That's it. Just walked in, and they jumped on there and started barking, and then she got into a panic, and that's when it went open.
Well,
I wasn't there, so.
Yeah. Well, my dad watched it, and he's like, well, why didn't they just... He goes, if that was me, I would have just kicked my way. I'm like, no, you wouldn't have.
Oh.
Well, that would have made it worse, right?
And that's correct. If you're going to assault a dog, you better have what you call something backing you, because they see right through it.
Yeah.
You could be just a screaming rabbit that's trying to get away, as opposed to a dominant grizzly bear that's going to pulverize them. Dogs do have some good common sense, not stupid.
Yeah.
They know when they're going to get hurt. Those dogs were fearless.
Yeah.
And that's all there is to it. However, individually, I can tell you right now, the damage would not have been even nowhere near, and that's not because of one dog, but the aggression itself wouldn't have been as bad. Those two dogs fed off of each other.
Yeah.
And go primal. What you be understanding about primal, when you have two dogs that go primal, i.e. pack mentality, because you hear it all the time with people, my dog pack, your dog pack, yeah, they're their own pack, and I'm just part of it. you're an idiot. There is no such thing as a dog pack. You're the ruler, and they listen. That's it. Because if you start going dog pack, if you look at the natural process of canids, more wild ones, wolves will kill coyotes that enter and encroach on their turf. They will fight other animals or other predators, especially from the same species, and kill it if it enters their turf. They're not welcoming. So when your dogs go primal, they become territorial. Now all you got to do is add those deliveries all the time and everything else. You know, I cannot stress enough how important it is to use crates in a household when you have dogs. Every professional will tell you that.
Yeah.
But here's the problem I see when I tell people to use a crate. They think it's them being put in there or their child being put in there. No. That keeps the dog safe and the people coming into your house safe. Because unless you have complete control, you cannot predict. And even to my day, as long as my dogs are social, when people come into my house, I look at the character of who they are and what they're like, and I put the dogs away when I know that these people can spark something just by who they are.
Yeah.
And their demeanor and their mannerisms. Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Phew. I don't know. So I'm, you know, the thing that just gets me, like where it sets up in my bones, is the fact that, you know, when I give my dog a bully stick or something, a treat like that, where they're going to enjoy it, they take it to the dog bed to enjoy it. And that's exactly what these dogs did. They took her to their dog bed.
That's right.
That's very...
They were bringing their kill back to their den.
Yeah.
That's primal.
It's very Hannibal Lecter-ish.
That's primal.
Yeah.
Where somebody in this world promoted multi-dog homes and multi-dog parks and all this stuff without proper instruction, and it's a free-for-all, and the animals will go primal. I told you once where I went with my dog off leash in a training class, and I went to a dog park, and I kept my dog on the outside of the fence showing somebody this is where you should not be going. And once my dog walked up to the fence, there were 4 dogs that went absolutely ballistic. I called her back. The owner went to stop the dogs, or one of the owners, and the dogs started fighting, and she got bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's how primal it becomes. Now, skilled people know to divide and conquer, because if you watch a wolf with his pack, he's going to be menacing if another canid comes in. But if you watch him on his own or her on their own, they avoid the situation.
Yeah, because they don't have backup. Mm-hmm.
So this is just, unfortunately, with what happened to that girl in Texas, was a number of things, as I've said. 2 dogs going primal, agitated at the door by deliveries, and a meat person who is not a strong individual, and probably is what a person who seeks affection from dogs. That's just a bad recipe, because the dogs look at her as being subordinate. No different than a coyote encroaching on them on 138-pound wolf's territory. Coyote's dead. That's just how it works. The second piece is there was a baby in the house. Now, whether the baby was there or not doesn't really matter, but strong dogs like these dogs that have bonded to the baby, from what I heard on the video, will have an even higher protective instinct.
Well, a lot of people are thinking, well, the baby isn't in the home. It's like, yes, but the baby's smell is in the home. And I think it was a 3-year-old, but still,
That's right. If your dogs bond to your child, then they will bond to the most vulnerable. And that tells me two things. One is that the dogs are reasonably sane, but two is they're also very powerful and have embraced the baby, which means these are not subordinate dogs. Right away, they're not subordinate. People misconceive a dog that's being gentle with a baby as being a subordinate. No, it's the exact opposite. This is what people don't understand, right? And finally, because the owner introduced them into the home, the dogs accepted the people ready of any issue. Now let's look at the character of the person. Now this would have to be an incredibly emotionally strong girl to go through what she went through, and she'll have a good attitude about it. However, did she act in a subordinate manner with a high-pitched voice saying, "How you doing, guys? I'm here to take you out"? That, within the doorway of that house, is an invasion. Now, if you got two self-regulating dogs, which is most of the case in two-dog homes, because most people do not understand the level of training and work that you have to have with having two dogs. There's an article on my site that talks about called Dog Kills Puppy, and it pretty well explains it. They're in the entry door to the doorway. The dogs probably jumped up on her at first because they're excited. She fell down, and then it went bad. That's pretty well what happened. Now, I'll give you an example of another couple of my dogs. I have a dog named Ranger at home. He's my son's dog. He's completely trained. He's absolutely social. I can't tell you how many people I have had over, and he's fine. He plays ball. He goes everywhere. You know, this is the house dog, so you know what I require of my house dogs. They got to be social. If I have him in the house and I'm not home, it doesn't matter if you played with him for an hour. You're not getting in the house. Now, I'm smart about it because he's in a crate. He's not running loose. Because every time someone comes to the door, he keeps charging the door. He's being trained to be aggressive at the door. My guess is these people didn't use crates.
Well, they had crates in the video. There were some crates in the video I saw, but I guess they were loose. I mean, they had to have been loose when she came in.
Well, but it's absolutely normal for a dog to protect its home. And in a tight environment like that, once she started screaming, it made it worse. Not her fault, but this is just what it is, right?
Yeah.
So when I looked at the dogs in the kennel, they were extremely aggressive in their kennel, and that reason being is that that's a barrier. So many people misconceive the different parameters of dogs. Yes, you can have an absolutely wonderful social dog, but that doesn't mean he won't protect his home. The second piece is, what qualifications did this girl have as a professional with proper schooling and understanding and training with strong dogs to be able to approach inside of a house and deal with managing these dogs? If she was truly professional, and any professional will tell you, you don't do that. It takes several visits and several interactions long before you can enter a house.
Well, she said she said that when she met them the week before, that they were very sweet and wonderful social dogs, or however she described them, and she had never seen dogs turn like this. Never.
And that tells me she's very naive.
Yeah, because I have a.
I don't mean to insult her. I'm telling you straight, she's very naive.
Yeah, I have a neighbor that has a German Shepherd. I think it's mixed with a cattle dog, female, older. And she says, "Hey, can you let my dog out this weekend or whatever?" She's like, I don't. It was just kind of a short notice kind of thing, and she gave me her garage code or whatever. And when I went in, and I had not met this dog, and I'm like, "That's going to be interesting." And I walk in, and I know what I'm doing. I'm like, but it's like, "Hey, I need to take you up for a walk." And that dog was like, "What are you doing breaking into my house?" And I'm like, "But you can see her go through the thought process of, but I do have to go to the bathroom, so I guess I'll go with you. I don't know." Like, I had.
You approached it properly. And here's my question, Lauren. Can you imagine two dogs that were powerful and apprehensive with that attitude that really don't want to bite you, but once you start pushing them around or starting to tell them what to do in their own home, and the owner's not home, it's only natural for a dog to do what it does. I mean, people are forgetting what dogs are. dogs are people too movement, and dogs have the same reasoning as people. Well, okay, stop the burglar that's going to hurt the baby, but you got to be nice to the dog walker. That's not how it works. If the dog is indirectly taught to be aggressive at the door, it's going to do that to anybody who walks in. It doesn't reason and say, this is a dog walker taking me for a walk, or the burglar. It's going to do what it instinctually knows to do. Add a child, add two dogs that are self-regulating, that are very primal in attitude, and this is a recipe for disaster. The level of damage done to that poor girl probably didn't start that way until she fell and started screaming. And if you know anything about predators, especially if you watch a coyote or something killing a rabbit, they get real heightened when the animal screams just before it dies. So, again, it's not the girl's fault. It's not the persons that own the dog's fault. It's not the dog's fault. I'm going to credit this to a lot of the crap that's being taught out there. The dogs are people too. And here's what I'm going to say about dog walkers, and I'm going to have a lot of enemies here. Why do we need dog walkers? Other than two reasons. One is we don't walk our dogs or train them properly. We're putting the onus on someone else. And number two, here's my reasoning on this. When you go to bed at night, you're sleeping for 8 hours. Who gets up in the middle of the night to let up their dogs? Nobody. It's very rare. Unless, of course, the dog's not well. So what is the problem with going to work and leaving your dog alone for 8 hours? I never got it, because as long as I've been in dogs 51 years, I got no dog walkers. I'd be gone all day. I'm at work right now. I just left the house at 9 this morning. I won't be home till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. My house dog is in the house. He has no problem with it. So what is this? Dogs are people too. And dogs are people too movement is a denial of a dog's existence. And that's the greatest act of cruelty. I don't care what anybody says. Your intentions can be marvelous, but the end result shows what you've really done. And we're seeing more aggression now. We're seeing more anxious dogs. We're seeing more children hurt. We're seeing big dogs killing little dogs. What do you think this is all about? We're putting them on pedestals. That's not where a dog belongs. Dog belongs beside you, being instructed on what to do and have someone to look up to. When we're soft and we think that their kids or dogs are people too, we are now denying them who they are. We don't direct them properly, and they take matters in their own hands, or teeth for this case. Well, here's what I got to say to people. If dogs are so wonderful as we call them, and they are, then what do you need dog trainers for?
Yeah.
Simply is they're not wonderful. They're to be made wonderful and made to fit in human society. The problem is we're humanizing them instead of teaching them according to their viewpoints on how to conduct themselves.
Yeah.
This is the problem.
I think a lot of code dogs, even dogs that people have had for years, have been affected by COVID because the people they weren't leaving the house at all. And it was funny because I think people were locked down for months and nobody went anywhere for a while. And then all of a sudden things started to lighten up and people started to go on vacation being traveling to visit family at a distance. And so I would, I watch a couple people's dogs and their dogs were very weird when I got them. Even though they know my house, they've been to my house, they know Aunt Lauren. It's very funny. Like you ask any of my neighbors that I watch their dogs, and a lot of them stop in my driveway and won't move because they want to come visit. Some of them run away from home, come to my house, and see me. But I crate and I have a routine. I think they appreciate that. They also like playing with the other dogs and smelling the scents in the yard and stuff. But even then, through COVID, when I was watching those dogs, they were weird. So I can imagine like these dogs, I don't know how long these people had them. I wanted to see if they got them from a shelter, who assessed them. I don't know. Do you think that they were bouncing around reactive in the barrier inside the kennel in the video in the news video, but what were they like at the adoption center? Or was it a foster home that met them out and there wasn't a barrier, and so you can't really tell? Could the bite and the mauling have changed the dog?
Well, But you talk about environment. You know my house. You've been there.
Yep.
I have my show dogs and my breeding stock by my office. My security dogs are way at the back of the property. What is it, 250 feet from the office? The dogs that are more reactive and appear more aggressive in their kennels are my show dogs. Can you tell me why?
Because they see all the stimuli.
And coming in and out, and people pulling out their dogs and all this stuff.
Yep.
So, yet my security dogs are quiet. Even if you walk up there with me, they'll bark a little bit, tell them cut it out, and that's it. But I have dogs that, one in particular, who's uncontrollable when there's aggression simply because of the way he was exposed to a barrier. You let him out, and he's fine. So now if these dogs, if we go back to it, with delivery people, it would be no similar to my circumstances with my security or breeding dogs. In and out, dropping off packages at a barrier that creates more aggression.
Yeah.
This is why I believe it, that if you had Amazon or whatever company delivering your goods all day long, then put your dogs in a crate away from the doorway. Then they don't learn this stuff.
Now, a lot of people will say that the barrier aggression is a lot of fun for a dog. Like I have these videos that I'm going to share.
Insecurity of a dog.
Well, wait a minute. There's these videos of dogs that are choosing to stand behind a barrier. Like there's a street, wide open street. There's these dogs walking around, street dogs, and there's a panel of a fence, and they go up and bark through that fence and then walk off. They could easily go around it, or the gate that's opening and the dogs are barking at each other through the gate as it's moving, even though the gate's wide open, and they could easily get to each other and fight, but they don't.
Their territorial instinct, right? Because it's a clear barrier between their turf and the turf on the other side. What you watch for is if you have two dogs behind a fence, let's say, and they're barking, if a person were to walk 40 feet away from that barrier, the aggression is diminished, right? Because of that neutral zone based on the primal instinct of wolves. It's the same idea.
Yeah.
Wolves will get aggressive when other wolves try to encroach on their boundary line. If there is a neutral territory between both wolf packs, and one stays at their turf and the other one stays on theirs, but they're both very aware of the one's at the territorial boundary, the aggression doesn't increase until there's challenge. Problem is that people don't realize what they're doing when they're challenging a dog.
Like, for instance, it's a very nice day today. It's 70-something degrees, sun's out. A lot of people still working from home, and they leave their dog outside. Or I even leave the door open with a bug off screen on it, and they go in and out. But some people just let their dogs just bark at the fence and go wild. And they're like that on a walk. You see them all like rigid and walking stressed on a walk, where I don't let my dogs bark through a fence. I don't let them bark at stimuli walking past.
That's right. And between winter and spring, it's social spot syndrome for dogs. Whereas you and I can't wait to get out and walk and meet people and go and have an ice cream or go to a club or an outdoor patio. A dog's different. A dog's been living a quiet, remote life, mainly because most people, it's too cold to take the dog out for a walk. Or the dog's going to get cold being out there more than 10 minutes. That's a load of crap. So now all of a sudden, everything drastically changes because the sun's out. This is the time that most dogs start biting. And then what you'll see is the next time that dogs are real big at biting is around the holidays. Why? How often do they have a family full of guests in the house at Christmas time?
Yeah, with food all spread everywhere on all the counters. And yeah.
You see, it's not about making the dog fit according to understanding the dog's mentality. It's forcing the dog to fit, even though they really aren't. But you're not seeing it on the dog's point of view and expecting the dog to reason and adapt, no different than you and I would.
Yeah.
Doesn't work that way. Everything is a slow introduction and a slow progression. But if the handler or the owner of the dog pampers it, spoils it, and acts subordinate to that dog, which is something else that we could talk about later on in another segment, then the dog takes control.
Yeah.
And that is what the trend is nowadays.
So here's another thing I was going to ask you is those dogs,
You know how some dogs will bite, and we get rescues, get calls. You've of course have gotten calls of people that's like it bit my kid in the face, or it bit me, or something, or it killed my other dog, and then it would run into the crate and hide, or it was very calm afterwards. These
dog after bites is usually calm.
Yeah, these dogs weren't, though. You saw the cops had to get them on it took them 30-something minutes to get in that house, which is, of course, they are more intruders that the dogs feel they have to take out, but even after
Guys with a uniform and a catch pole, sure.
Yeah.
They're only doing what naturally comes natural to them,
Yeah.
right?
So, even when they got them into the animal control and in those kennels, they were, acting wild. Like they weren't calm.
When they were caught on the catch poles, they were very submissive.
Well,
I saw the flash of it.
Well, the pit mix was scrambling and acting nuts, but again, it's probably because it's just not trained to be on a leash or whatever. I mean, some dogs act like that because they're used to being walked in a harness, and you put something around their neck, and they're like, "Woohoo!" So
people are mismanaging their dogs, and that's all there is to it. And I don't, this dog walker thing, and these doggy parks and doggy daycare and all this crap, to me, is the first detriment to destroying your animal.
Dogs are like kids, they're going to spat. You try to minimize it as best you can. You try to redirect, separate if you need to. Luckily enough, it doesn't happen very often.
A few minutes later, while we were talking with Owens, we heard the employee yell, "Eddie, I need your help."
Come on. Come on. Oh, here, guys. Come here. Come here, guys. Come on. Come on. Come here. There. Get off of him. Get off him. No. You mother. No. See, that one was out too long and he needed to be. But it's all good.
Because of the inconsistencies within what's going on in the house and what's going on with the other people that handle it, there's no uniformity. And that adds to another dog's problem.
Yeah. I even put on my adoption application, I've changed it. It's like, do you plan on taking this dog to a dog park? Yes or no. Do you plan on taking this dog to doggy daycare? Yes or no. And I have to tell them, I don't get the dogs that are, frou-frou. I got the ones that have something amiss. And it's like this, I can't imagine this little Coton de Tulear that I have, her at a dog park. Not good. It would be very.
People are living vicariously through their dogs.
Yeah.
That's what's happening. And we're destroying animals, and we're destroying the very sanctity of what having a dog is, because we seem to have forgotten that. I know in my seminars, when I was doing them, I'd look at them and say, how would you feel being treated like a dog? And for some reason, when you say treated like a dog, everybody thinks it's bad, but they're forgetting that that's a dog. Dog does what it's told. It sits at your feet. It listens to you. You speak once, it's got to do what it does. But then I turn around and they'll say, well, I would feel miserable. Then I turn around and say, so how do you think the dog feels being treated like a human? And they go to me, oh, wonderful. Well, how can that be? Because now you're denying the dog its existence, and that's the greatest act of cruelty. Period. Nothing more.
Yeah.
It's the mindset. And unfortunately, this lady probably walked into that house trying to be their friends and walked right into a blind situation in a cornered cubbyhole. So if you look at wolves hunting prey, when they got it cornered, they actually become more lethal.
Yeah, the 800 bites.
Yeah, because she fell. They were in killing mode.
Yeah.
Right? It's not her fault. It's not the dog's fault. It's partially the owner's fault. But I blame the other half of the dog training society, as I call them, the society that's teaching people that dogs are people too, and that they have to reason because we're putting them into a human mindset. Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. Right?
I think you're onto something. It's like people are going, who's to blame for this? I mean, there's a lawsuit that's happening.
The circumstance.
It's just one of those things where she didn't know. She's 22 years old. She couldn't possibly have seen everything. I mean, she says she's been doing this for years, but she couldn't possibly have seen dogs like this. I mean, and she said, I've never seen dogs do this before.
Well, that tells me how naive she is.
There's a neighbor that lets their dog off leash because it only has 3 legs. And I opened the garage door and that dog was right there. And I had a foster dog pit bull that I had just got from the shelter. Yeah, and we've asked him multiple times, please put your dog on a leash, please put your dog on a leash, because it was right by my garage door. I opened up, it was like a curtain on a stage going up, and there was a dog.
Here it is. That dog is lame. It's missing a leg. So dogs look at other predators as being invasive, i.e. this dog in that case. The dog is going up to your property, challenging your dog.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. He goes across.
You know, it's weak. So what's the natural instinct for a dog to do? Kill it.
I've stopped these people before on a walk, and I said, hey, you know, you got a dog that's got 3 legs. I mean, other dogs can see that it has 3 legs. Not only that, but this dog is walking across the bushes and the sidewalk right up against your windows, and all the dogs that have the windows open are going wild, like slamming at the
Correct.
Yeah, it's like
the dog is weak.
Yeah, and if they get through a screened-in window that's open and gets to that dog, the same thing is going to happen to their 3-legged dog that happened to this girl.
On this girl's part, I'm not a lawyer, but if I were to look at liability and how to stop this garbage from repeating itself, is you have to analyze what went wrong so that we could avoid this from in the future. And what I'm seeing is everybody has empathy for this girl, and rightfully so for her injuries, but nobody is taking this on an objective perspective to see why it happened. Every party that is involved with this incident is at fault. The girl is at fault for entering a home and being naive. You want to be a dog walker, you better learn about dogs. The people are naive and at fault because they had 2 dogs running loose in the house and didn't realize the protective instinct of dogs.
Would it have been different if they were crated?
Taking them out one at a time, or she would have seen the dogs being aggressive and said, I can't do this.
Right.
And walked out of the house.
Exactly.
But that opportunity wasn't there because these dogs were loose in the house. Well, what have we forgotten? What were dogs originally used for whenever they first came into our lives? Hunting and protection. Do you think that's changed? No.
There's a lot of people that are doing service dog stuff now, service dog breeding. I actually had somebody tell me, this service dog group breeds labs and golden retrievers, and they hope
specific to breeding.
Yeah, but they actually said, I hope I get a lab because they're calmer, and I'm like, that's a lot of crap.
I can't make it down. I can't make it down. So get down to your feet and jump around. Jump around. Jump around.
I was very tickled. I was like, but then like she doesn't want to argue with me and then gets off the phone. I'm like, you don't know dogs, but they're gonna get one of these dogs to work with. I'm like, okay. I mean,
find one with a calmer character. They're not calm in general.
Yeah, you have to train them.
Right, it's like that Labradoodle thing. Well, we buy them because they're smart. Hello? Yes, which means they need to be trained and mentally stimulated because they're going to end up being smarter than you are, you dumbass.
Yeah.
And how many people had problems with those dogs?
Every trainer will tell you. Every single one of them jumps on you and acts crazy and out of control because they're bouncy, happy, overstimulated dogs.
Highly intellectual, you start to dysfunction when you're around those that aren't. Get back to life. I don't care if you're human or a dog. It's the same thing.
I can count on one hand how many doodles I've met that have been perfectly social and calm. And
that's because they had strong, objective owners who knew what they were dealing with and took the time to make it right.
Yeah. And how
didn't assume they were smart, so they didn't have to train it.
Yeah. they're matted and stinky, and what's the whole point of getting a doodle? It's because they're hypoallergenic. That's what people say. It's like, well, if they're matted and stinky, how hypoallergenic are they?
They're not going to, well, this is it. You see, it's the mindset of owners and our society that's changed their perspective on dogs. And that is why there's so many people being hurt. Now, what the court system's going to do, and my guess, and I know up in Canada, is they're going to offer that girl compensation through insurance for the people, and rightfully so. But nobody in the courtroom is going to truly analyze what happened and why as a preventable measure, because then they would see that all parties involved were at fault.
Yeah, that's why I'm doing this.
This liability suit in half.
Yeah, that's why I said we need to do this this interview, because it gets swept under the rug. The news media goes all over it, and
it'll happen again.
It'll happen again, exactly. And nobody realizes what exactly happened, and nobody's going to learn from it. It's yet again another bite story. Yet again, won't get analyzed. Yet again, will not stop or teach people about dogs. All this is going to do is cause homeowners insurance to get even tighter, because that's what's going to happen. I mean, she's going to get a payout from that guy's homeowners insurance. And he had a pit boxer mix and he had a German Shepherd mix. Those two are usually not allowed on homeowners insurance. And think of all the people.
You're going to lose everything when all you had to do was keep his dogs in the crate if you had a dog walker. And number two, know what you're looking for in a dog walker. This woman is probably a wonderful person who should be dealing with soft, old, and elderly dogs. But serious business dogs,
Yeah.
that girl doesn't fit the bill in my books.
Yeah, she's very, very nice. I mean, you can tell she's a very, very sweet girl.
It's not her fault.
Right.
It's a sweet girl.
Yeah.
Dogs don't like sweet people. They like them.
Dogs like that don't like sweet people. And they see you coming.
Right. Do you remember what I used to say all the time? Nice people don't have good dogs.
Yeah.
Because they refuse to see what a dog really is. To be a nice person, to be a good dog owner, that you have to take control and be in command and be the dog's master. And masters are nice, but they're very matter of fact, and they get things done, and they do it now. It's called self-discipline.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, I watched yesterday in class a wonderful dog that I bred. He's a powerful male, and you could see the variances in the dog's look in his eyes when the boyfriend is handling the dog, because he's been through it. Now he's got this girlfriend that has guilt because she's afraid of doing the right thing with him, and she feels guilty because she's not doing it 100% proper, and you can see the dog's eyes go cold when she handles him. That's a recipe for disaster. So the very nature of a person creates a dog trouble, and this is why you want to get into it being a dog walker, you need to train some dogs first.
Yeah.
All kinds of temperament and attitudes.
The best thing you can do if you're going to be a dog walker is go and work at a shelter. And you have to get barrier aggression dogs out of runs. You have to get them out.
Just go to a training school that trains dogs in protection so you understand the assets and all the aspects of a dog's temperament and what kind of scenarios happen and what the dog's potential is. See, a lot of people are shocked when a dog does this kind of damage.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. But are we looking at the dog for its nature as a dog in general? Or are we solely looking at the woman's injuries, which are shocking? Because the minute you look at the girl's injuries that are shocking, you remove all train of thought as to why it happened, and you're responding emotionally, and rightfully so, to the injury. I get it. But that doesn't help the situation at all. How many people are enraged over what happened? Well, okay, that's sure. But how many people are actually taking the perspective and looking at it from outside in and saying, this is why it happened?
They're not, because they don't understand it. They don't understand it.
They don't want to understand it. That's the problem. Right?
Years ago, you said people are going to keep doing things and going along and not understanding dogs to the point where laws are going to be made after law after law after law after, and next thing you know, you'll only see a dog in the zoo.
That's right.
Because and it's going to be for the top, like the Queen Elizabeths that have her dogs, and they have handlers on staff. Those are the only people. It's going to go back to that. those are the only people that are going to have dogs. And you were saying that joking, but you look at this, everybody went out and got a dog. I mean, the amount of dogs in my neighborhood doubled. I mean, I can't believe it. And then all of a sudden they're all out.
The dogs, triple the dog problems.
Yeah. And I always keep,
Nothing to do with the dogs.
yeah. And then, of course, you got the invisible fence in the front yard.
It's the worst thing you could put a dog in.
Yeah. And, I actually,
Easy. That's what that's for.
yeah. And actually, I was walking the dogs the other day and a FedEx delivery guy shows up and I interviewed him real quick and I said, so when you drop a package on the front porch, talking about this story, when you drop a package on the front porch, you see dogs come at you at the door. And he's like, yeah. I said, do you think if that door were to break open, would they get you? He goes, oh yeah, I think they would. He goes, not all of them, but some of them. I think they'd get through the door and they'd be fine. He goes, and I'm a dog person. He goes, I have dogs.
But see, this is where the guy has to do his job, and the owner's mismanaging the dogs. If you know you got delivery going on from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. during your daytime, put the dog in a crate or have it out in the back with a kennel. Now it's not exposed to territorial aggression.
Well, and he was telling the story.
No, I don't say loose in the backyard. I say in a kennel.
The reason why people don't like kennels in the backyard is because we rescues go and get dogs out of slovenly messes in a kennel, matted
And
feces. Yeah.
I totally agree, but that's where a kennel is misused.
Yeah.
No different than how training may be misused or how you would eat a bag of chips. And if you ate 10 bags of chips, you're now going to be 400 pounds as opposed to just eating a couple of pieces of chips over a few days. I mean, everything has its virtues and everything has its downfall. It all depends on the education that's behind it, right?
Yep.
You'll never ever see me with people that come to my house and one of my dogs is loose on the property. I get really upset if they get out of the car. I don't care if the dog knows you. It changes the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell everybody, stay in your car. Do not get out until I get them. That doesn't mean that my dogs are aggressive, because they're not. What it means is that the dog will kick into its protective instinct at any given time. All you got to do is move the wrong way, and they're going to do what comes naturally.
Absolutely. Now, on that topic,
keep it safe. Yeah.
On that topic, I've pulled into your driveway and your dog was out. So people know is you live on, rural property. You do have neighbors that are at a decent distance. You can hear them through the trees. But when I pulled in, the dog, here's what happens is when you pull in and the dog's out by itself and it's kind of like jogging around, it never leaves the property, but it tightens up to the house because you're in the house.
That's correct.
And it goes, oh.
If I'm in the office, it goes to the office. Right?
Yeah. And it goes, okay, what do we got here? Is the look on the dog's face. And yours are protection dogs, trained or not trained, either way, pet dogs or whatever. People don't realize that their dogs do the exact same thing.
That's correct.
Now add invisible fence to that, and you got a delivery guy that's going, okay, how do I get through the front yard invisible fence to put this package on the front porch and the dog is out?
You don't do it. That's all there is to it. You make the owner go and get the package at a depot. And the reason being is it's not worth the danger, right?
The protection aspect of this video or this story, I know absolutely nothing about it. All I know about it is what you've talked about and how your technique is kind of taught to have an off switch. What I know is you create agitation to develop a bite. That's what
you actually create agitation to heighten a dog where it really has no choice but to bite, because that's their nature, right?
Yep. And the second thing is your whole theory, your whole training theory is to keep the dog from getting too high on the, we talked about it in another video, the predatory arch, and to have an off switch and to keep the dog level and not let it stay hyped. So professional handlers like military or police, their dogs have an
do that, yes.
their dogs have an off switch. That's what they want, or else somebody's going to get hurt.
Right.
The problem is these pet owners do not teach an off switch, and they just go off the scales, off the charts all the time.
Well, what happens is these owners set up the environment to create a facsimile like protection training, because all protection training is using a dog's natural instinct and timing where you want it to go, right?
Yes.
So when you got Amazon people coming in and out of the door and leaving and that door and leaving, that's an environment of agitation. And then the instinct of a dog, very simply put, and their dogs, these dogs did it, okay, is that the way I train my dogs is that they apprehend somebody, and if the person stops moving, they hold them, but they don't tear them apart. And it's easy to let them go because that's a calming thing, right?
Yeah.
But in that case, the constant agitation with no bite, i.e. the Amazon drivers, the enhancement of two dogs being together, which if I were to go back into my days of security dog, I never used single dogs. I always put two dogs together. And I could take two medium dogs that really weren't biters or just barkers, but you put them together long enough, and I'll tell you, someone climbed the fence, they were toast.
Yeah.
So, whereas one would run off, right, or maybe back away or think twice, but when they're together, it's a different story. They feed off each other, and that's what happened there. Now, I got to say one thing about this. Now, I'm not trying to sound cold here. I'm not trying to look at it in any perspective other than what humans think and what dogs think. So here's what I'm going to say on the human side. On the human side, we are totally empathetic and feel absolutely horrible for what happened to this young girl. We can all agree on that. She's most likely disfigured for life. But on the human side, if it wasn't a young girl and it was a burglar going in there to harm or steal, would everybody be in such empathy? Dogs did the same thing.
Yeah, the press release would be wild, and those dogs would have hero status. Yep.
Correct. But now let's look at the dog's perspective. In that dog's eyes, that woman was no different than a burglar.
Right.
So even though she was harmed, and of course, all a bit of empathy and support this woman could have, 100%. But as long as we keep thinking on the human side and forget how dogs think, this is going to keep repeating itself.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Rhode Island, was it years ago? 2 Crescent Canarios got out of an apartment, and there was a woman in a hallway, and she got scared, and they killed her. Of course, an innocent, horrible, tragic accident, but again, that's dog's instinct, right? She must have passed by their apartment door, or was near it or something. The door opened and dogs came out. Again, improper housing, improper management. You see, the way this should have worked out is I'm going to look at it in 3 ways. Number one, I don't know, and I don't want to knock shelters and rescues and everything else, but when you have 3 children in a house, whether you get a dog from a rescue or from a professional, the key is professional, you have 3 children. It was just a chance that those dogs were good with those kids. But on the other side of it, if you had dogs that powerful, then there should have been some way, shape, or form that training was enhanced and demanded upon and made to happen.
Right.
With the understanding of proper management. On this young girl's note, when you say dog walker, automatically the owners of these dogs, whether it be these people or anybody else, are going to assume this person was a professional. And a professional knows their way around dogs. Unfortunately, this girl was a young girl, probably trying to put herself through school or doing something, and loved dogs, and says she was a dog walker, but dog walker now removes the fact of other one thing. You're walking a dog. Now here's my next question. Let's say this girl succeeded in walking these dogs or getting to know them or whatever happened and this occurrence didn't happen. What if she was walking them and those 2 dogs were in her hands and she wasn't a strong, experienced handler and they pulled her halfway across the park and took out another dog or whatever? Now what?
Yeah, that happens a lot.
That's correct. So there's a lot of factors here that harm this. And the final example I'll give you here was, you guys remember Pugsley?
Yeah.
Okay, Pugsley was friendly. He hung around with everybody, remember?
Yes.
Yeah, he was a bit of a cantankerous dog, but he never did any harm. Right? You come at him at seminars and all of this stuff. Not even dog aggression.
Yeah.
One day he was laying on my front porch, right? Just laying there, sunning himself as Pugsley always did. And this was the time I had peaked at Catacoola, and I phoned up my buddy who was a cop. And Kevin, and he came over and I said, you got to see this dog. And he worked dogs on the police force. I said, you guys should be looking at this thing for a cop dog. And that was he. So what he goes up to my porch as he was going up the stairs. The minute he touched my door, guess what Pugsley did? Bit him right in the ankle. He comes back with all his pants ripped up in his uniform, and he looked at me and he goes, man. And I go, what? He goes, your pug just took me out. Maybe we should incorporate him in the breeding program. What do you think? He goes, he's better than most shepherds. But you see how you can easily underestimate it, right?
Yeah, but
I mean, on the serious note, take the humor out of it. And, of course, Pugsley isn't going to do any damage. But whether it's a pug, whether it's a Shih Tzu, whether it's a Rottweiler, a Doberman, a Border Collie, a Poodle, or a Golden, you enter a dog's house and you don't know it that well, you're leaving yourself wide open. Dogs, that's a death sentence. So
yeah.
management falls on, one, seeing what the damage of the dog is.
Yeah.
And even the best dog in the wrong environment could become a monster. I mean, that's a given fact.
And that's what I was going to ask you. This situation, that brings me to, I guess, the final conclusion is, how do we prevent stories like this gal? And I have 2 points, and with my limited, just my rescue angle, and even, I guess, and then I'll let you go on, build from that. You might agree, you might disagree with this, but from my perspective, there's 2 points. One, the owners have to be honest about their lifestyle. You know,
yes.
on your adoption application, do not fabricate a lifestyle, because you will get the wrong dog. I mean, we have no way, rescues and shelters have no ability to follow you around for a week and see if you really are a marathon runner. And if you are a marathon runner, are you going to take your dog running with you, really? Or are you going to leave it at home because you want to focus on your time and not goof around with a dog that's running after a squirrel? So, you know, that's one thing. And the second thing is, in this story, I think the shelters or the rescue, whoever they got those dogs from, they need to not place powerful, high-energy dogs in homes that will struggle with those dogs. And
that's correct.
I sit there and look, and I think all the time what you say is, you know, for dogs that are powerful, whatever, nobody should have a dog like that unless their youngest child is 5 years old. And they're done having kids. Right. They cannot have any more children. Of course, there's grandchildren that show up too, and people don't think, they go, on their application, I don't have kids. Well, yeah, but your kids are in college and very
grandchildren that come over.
Yeah, that still qualifies. That's even worse because grandchildren don't live there, so they're a visiting. Right. It's like a neighbor kid coming over. It's different from correct. These kids lived in this home with these 2 dogs, and they were fine with these 3 kids that were very young. But that guy in the video, he looked fit, he looked educated, he looked like he had his act together. The house was a nice home. I mean, he probably made pretty good money.
Well, he did have his act together in one aspect, because when that girl came in to meet the dogs, there was no problem. So that tells me a lot about his ability to handle the dogs or the respect the dogs may have had for him. But on the management end, he grossly underestimated what reality was.
Yeah.
You see, you know, as I always said, if you got 1 dog, you're fine. And you can do the work. But when you got 2, you better be disciplined.
Yeah.
Leo once said to a client of mine that had 3 dogs, he talked to his 3 dogs, and he goes, you're not good enough to have 3 dogs. You don't have the discipline. Now, fortunately, this guy, you know, took the time to figure it out and realized what the problems he was having and got it all straightened out. But then his wife didn't. And anything that bad happened with those dogs was in the presence of his wife, not him. So it's a whole family affair. But the shelters need to get professionals in there to teach their staff on one, how to manage dogs to keep it from getting worse, and two, how to pick people.
Yeah.
And it's not just about whether you got a fenced backyard or not. It's the character of the person. As you state, I'm in total agreement with it. But then where is the after support? Where is it that these people can go to get help as opposed to seeking it on their own?
Yeah.
It should come right out of the shelter. There should be programs there.
Well,
I've tried to set this up for years and spinning my wheels.
So whoever adopts my dogs, I say, well, it needs a trainer. Do you plan on taking it to training? And they said yes. And I go, which trainer? So I can kind of research it if they're not in the area. I know a lot of the trainers in my area, and like that's a good trainer. It's like I can't have my foster dog in my home does pretty well. So the foster dog, when it goes to their home, usually does pretty well for like a couple months, and then it falls apart because
That's your adjustment period.
well, and then they think, oh, it's doing so well, I'm just going to get rid of the crate. Or I'm just going to start letting it do all this stuff. I'm like, well, are you still crating it? Well, no. Okay. Or they only crate it when they're gone, and it causes separation anxiety. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't have that with this dog here because I rotate dogs. I crate them and I groom, and then I send the grooming dog home, and then I let my dogs out. So they cope with the routine here. I don't say cope. I mean, they end up enjoying it. Even the dogs that I dog sit like the routine and run away from home and come to my house, or they stop in my driveway.
Routine. They need a balance of routine. They need a balance of instruction and a balance of when to praise them. And the biggest problem that people fall on is idol worship. And we're being taught this. You're putting the dog on a pedestal. The dog doesn't want to be on a pedestal. It wants to be beside you, not above you. That's what creates a lot of the dysfunction, right?
That, and I have a feeling, I don't know if you've noticed this up there, and I could just be really reaching on this, but I think that this, when I first started out in rescue, I was like in my 20s, and I'm Gen X. So Gen X is very direct, and they're like, it is what it is, and this is it, and I'm going to tell it like it is. But now you have the younger generations that are afraid to hurt feelings and tell people, no, you can't have this dog. Whereas my theory is this dog, their owner surrender the dog to me, and my job is to put the dog in the right home. My job is not to, and I'm not saying it to like hurt their feelings. I'm saying, here's what you wrote in your application. Yeah, I'm like, this dog will come back to me if I put it in your home. Like this one woman has three little bitty dogs, Chihuahua mixes or something, Chihuahuas, and she's like, well, I would like to have Rosie. And I was approved by this other rescue, and I'm like, yeah, and that's a good rescue. However, your other dogs are not, they don't know Rosie. And she really kind of needs to be an only dog. I mean, other dogs stress her. There's competition constantly. At every step she takes, she is looking for confrontation every step. And she enjoys it. I mean, she gets high off of it. And I look at Steve, I go, picture Rosie in a home with 3 Chihuahuas. And he's like, oh my gosh. And I say, yeah. But this girl goes, well, just, if you change your mind, let me know. I'm like, yeah, I'm not. And I can't.
Your indicator is also if somebody has other dogs.
Yeah.
Like with me, if somebody comes and says, I got a dog, I want to get a companion dog for my dog, that already is a red flag. The next step is I look at that dog's behavior, and I know whether they're capable of handling one of mine or not.
Right.
And not that mine are anything different than anything else. It's just that a German Shepherd requires a relationship to the owner.
Yeah.
And if their dogs lack discipline, 9 times out of 10, the handler lacks it as well. Which in turn, as much as this guy has his dogs in one aspect, the setup and the way he had those dogs housed and whatever it is, I call it the soccer mom syndrome. Your dogs are good with you, so you think they're good with everybody else until you see obvious signs. No. When a dog does something obvious like bite, it's too late because it was already brewing months before in the dog's relationship with its owner. And most people, if you look at abuse today, and I'm going to say this, I don't really care. When I was dealing with shelters, and you know how long I've been in dogs, and I'm talking back to the 70s and 80s, dogs that were in shelters were dogs that were beaten or neglected or tied to trees. And I remember when I started the security dog program, those were the dogs I would find in shelters that were aggressive. Today is very different. It isn't. The dogs, and I don't know about down there, I'm talking about up here.
Well, it still happens.
Where?
Yeah.
It still happens to the extent it used to. The majority of surrenders with aggression are dogs that have been pampered
Yeah.
and can't cope. They've been sheltered from dealing with, and yet you got instructors on television telling you, don't stress out your dog, don't leave it out in the rain, don't let it walk in the rain, don't leave it out when it's 0 degrees outside or go for a walk. What? Remember this, many people say, well, that dog was dominant and this is why he did it and this is why she did it. Well, no, because in 51 years that I've been dealing with this stuff, I can count on both hands how many real dominant dogs there were and all the dogs I've dealt with. But if you were to ask me how many were made into being dominant, oh God, I can't even count.
Yeah, just about all of them. You want to sit on my front porch?
Doesn't have that kind of a nature about it, and you force it into it because of the way you manage and handle it, then the problem is that it starts to dysfunction because of the pressure it feels. But this is dog psychology.
Yeah.
This is not human psychology. So you basically, if you were to make a dog dominant, it'd be like taking somebody who was great at carpentry and forcing him into being, I don't know, a lawyer or a psychologist. Really? What will happen to that individual? Well, this is what they're doing to their dogs.
Yeah.
You know, and who do I look at for this? I don't know. Other than maybe internet, because internet, anybody could put anything up and present themselves as being professional when they hate to say it, really aren't.
Yeah.
And the average pet owner doesn't know what to look for. What they look for is somebody who's got the same character they have and appeases their feelings as opposed to gives them a dose of reality. Right?
So here's another question. Let's say the situation, let's say she got bit in the arm really bad. And they were, I guess, mildly sued over that. It wasn't disfiguring, but it was a warning shot. And let's say the dog owners come to you to hire you as a trainer. What would you tell them?
First thing I would look at is the environment they were in and how they were managing that. Then I would look at each and every one of their individual personalities. I would watch them handling the dog and then come up with my deduction, as you have seen in many of the evaluations that I've sent you to read every single time. And I would look at them and that article about the numbers game, the one you wrote, So My Dog Thinks I'm an Alpha. I evaluate people and then I evaluate their dog. So if their dog is a 5, let's say on the higher scale of the dominant side, I would look at the person and say, you're a 2. Now you need to step up to the plate or don't keep this dog. You're only going to end up in trouble. Right? Yeah. So, in all the years I've been training, I get to the point now where I actually look at a person and say, you can't do this. Now we'll give it a go, but usually after the 4th session, I've got a family right now, and it's 2 families. Both of their dogs have bit a family member. And it usually was a situation where the dog was on the couch, and then they went and tried to push the dog off, and it bit the owners. But then you look at the family, and let's see, this is the usual category. You got an over-nurturing mother or father, whoever it is, that tries to make the dog happy by giving it its needs. Then you have an over-disciplinarian that every time the dog does something, that person steps in and corrects it. And then you usually have a person in the family that's over-seeking affection. Well, the dangerous person in this family, they're all equally dangerous because it's imbalanced. But the one that's going to antagonize it is the 2. They all play a part, but the one that's a beating post will be the one that's seeking the affection.
Yeah.
The most vulnerable. And this dog that I got, that I'm dealing with, the girl doesn't like confrontation. She wears things to get her attention. You could tell. And I looked at her and I said, you seek attention, don't you? to get people to like you, don't you? She goes, how do you know? I said, I can tell. That's why your dog bit you. Because a dog, when an owner tries to get it to like it too much, that dog, in that dog's eyes, that owner is subordinate. And if that's the only owner in the house, then that dog is going to sit there and look at people as being lesser than what they should be, which we're supposed to be superior. The overcorrective guy is a desperate individual who is letting things go and then punishes the dog for his own or her own mistakes. And the other one sits there and overdoes it with the dog and pampers it and gives it everything for fear that it gets stressed out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with that is you need to put stress into a dog, but in a positive way, that it comes up with a conclusion that stress is stress capable. This is not what we're doing with dogs anymore. So if they're stressed out in their environment by 4 different approaches with their family members and react differently with each family member, that's creating an unpredictable dog. But is a dog unpredictable? No. It's just taken on those personas and decides to apply it in any given case that it may deem fit based on its character and personality of the person approaching the dog. And this is why dogs bite.
Yeah.
So what I tell people is you got to get it balanced. So the overcorrective dad, if you want to call it that, is told to tone down. The overcorrective or the over supportive mom, let's say, and I'm using this in a hypothetical term. It doesn't really matter what gender or sex you are, but the mom will over nurture. She needs to take the role of being a little bit more direct. And the person that's always seeking affection and getting on the ground and hugging the dog needs to understand that you need to also be partly directive and know where to put your affection. You don't just give an animal affection in a free way, a dog. The dog is geared to earn something and get rewarded for it. So set that up, whether it be training, whether it be bringing a ball back to you and everything else. Because people tend to over-affection their dogs. And then they want dogs to do something for them. The problem is, under dog psychology, if you're seeking too much affection from your dog, you're putting that dog in a higher place. It isn't going to train. So when you try to train, it stresses out even more.
Yeah.
So what you want to do is balance it first. Balance the family unit according to the dog's character. That's the only way you're going to succeed with this, which is a lot of trainers don't do that. As you know, myself in the class that we were working, when did we really actually start doing obedience with dogs and demanding more from the dog? Halfway through? What was the first half? Getting people to realize how they got to behave first.
Yeah.
And managing the environment. Because if you don't do that, I can't tell you how many highly obedience trained dogs that didn't have a manageable environment that ended up coming up worse.
Yeah, and the crying, the tears, the tears that would flow the first, always. It was hilarious. It's like, why am I crying? I don't know. It's like, because it's hard. Like you remember the dog, my fat dog blog, and the dog, the Airedale that was in there. She just recently passed away. Super senior dog, old. And she wanted to say, thank you, Sam, for helping her learn to thin her dog down, because that dog was so fat it couldn't move. It wasn't walking around. She thinned it down, and she says, I wouldn't have had this dog as long as I did if... Yeah. And she goes, it was a very hard, like even in the article, I make her, when we go out, we did coffee with Kathy and Beth, and I said, tell them the story. And she says, well, I was so mad at Lauren because she kept ripping on owners with fat dogs. I was so mad at her. And then I realized that's me. And I picked up all the food bowls, and I got a food bowl for everybody and a measuring cup, and all the dogs thinned down, and her household changed. That dog in particular, the Airedale, went wild because she lost weight and was bouncing and running, and she had to hire a trainer. It had completely changed. And she got longevity out of that dog because of it. And it had a knee surgery at one point, which, exacerbated the weight problem because it really wasn't walking. But even with a knee surgery, even older, she thinned the dog down and gave it life. And, no regrets. She changed that dog's life around. And that's just only one. And that was a really nice Airedale. I've stopped by her house a couple times, and it has just been a really nice dog. It's hard to believe she ever had behavior problems with it. But she's one of how many that I know of that have actually had the guts, the courage to look at herself and go, is it me? And that inner turmoil and that fight that you have, it's better than any therapist you'll ever go to, because that teaches you about you. Do you have attention-seeking syndrome? Do you have abandonment issues? Do you have excessive needs? Do you really need it? Your dog will tell you that.
Well, the biggest problem now with this COVID is these COVID dogs are going to have serious dysfunction, not just because people were home and that, but people were buying these dogs to fill a void in their lives that was taken away because of the COVID restrictions.
Yep.
That's a very dangerous precedent.
Yep.
That's not why you get a dog.
Yeah.
Now you're putting the burden on the dog to make you happy. Wrong.
Right.
Well, all they have to do is send it off to a board to train. Have somebody else fix it.
I don't board and train. I just don't. It's a relationship. And if I'm developing the relationship as a trainer with a dog, you're putting the demand on that dog's demand for its owners to be the same. It's even greater, and they can't meet that because they're not as skilled as I may be or somebody else. And you're creating a very dangerous precedent. It's not all dogs that will act that way, but there's quite a few, and you need to know which dog is capable of board and train and which one isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Which one that actually needs their owner's participation. That's not being done. And I'm thinking it's like celebrity trainer. I need to look good on camera no matter what. No. This is why I wanted to do a show where it starts right from the beginning with an owner that has a dysfunctional dog, right to finish, to show people what it really takes.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
And the hardships that the doggone owner go through to do that adjustment. It's not so easily presentable because it's not.
Yeah.
It just isn't. If a relationship in human terms is fractured, it's enough of a challenge to repair it. And we've all been there. It's another issue to do it with a dog that speaks a completely different language and has a totally different viewpoint.
Yeah.
So, what are we doing here, right?
Right.
In my day, you had to drive 3 hours to some remote place to see a trainer. And this was a real trainer. And the trainers would look at you and say, give me a reason why I should help you with your dog. If you didn't come up with the right answer, like, well, the dog stresses me out and everything else, they'd send you home. What they wanted to hear was, I need help with my dog because I screwed it up and I need to fix this. That's different.
Yeah.
That's not what's happening anymore. Well, Charlie, my Jack Russell, is tearing apart and eating holes in the wall. I don't understand it about this dog. I've given him all the love in the world. Why is he doing this? He's doing this because he's a frustrated dog. And you're his frustration. How many people can handle that being said to them? Not very many.
Not very many.
Yet I do it all the time.
Yeah.
You're the reason your dog is this way. So here, let me show you. And I'll take the dog, and in 20 minutes, and you've seen it as a different animal.
Yeah.
So is it the training or is it the persona behind it?
And then those people start crying. We've seen that happen.
Yeah.
There's a rescue in Cincinnati that had a foster dog for 2 years, and it was like, it wasn't really belly crawling. It was a yellow dog of some kind.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it was a puppy mill or something. Hoarder dog, typical hoarder dog. Tail tucked, scared, and they'd had it for 2 years in that state. It had been living in that state, and you said, here, give me that dog, and you walked up and you sat down, you started teaching class, and it was the very first time I met you, and you were sitting there talking, completely ignore the dog, and it was hiding under your chair, and within, 15, 20 minutes, you were just sitting with it, and it started to smell your pant leg, and it was checking you out, And then you would like touch it with your finger, and that was it. Just a real quick touch, and it went, oh. And then you backed away, and then finally it came out and it licked your hand, and they all started crying, all the people. You're like, why are you crying? And they said, it's the first time it's ever licked somebody. It's like, wow. Yeah.
Very emotional.
Yeah. To get back to the dog bite story.
I once had somebody explain the difference between biting, where a dog bites you on the body. If it bites you in the hand, they don't want to be touched. If it bites your legs, it's because of movement. It's usually herding dogs that do that. They try to control you. But if they bite in the face like that...
That's because you went down. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
See, what happened there is that it built into a frenzy. Right?
Yeah.
So we have a woman walking in the front door of a house in a small, confined hallway area. Right?
Yep.
So already that adds tension because she's going through the barrier of the dogs that are supposed to protect the house. After the bite, she started squirming. If you know anything about predators, when their prey squirms, they get more intent on biting, right? So, which, of course, with the pain and the damage and the panic in the woman, which would be a natural thing, they stopped biting her when she went down and stopped moving. But if she was still screaming, they would continue on their offensive. My guess is they were jumping up on her when she walked in the door. She's probably pushed forward or backed off, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. Might have fallen back from the dogs jumping on her, and then they bit her some more and pulled her down. She ended up on her back, and then it turned into a frenzy, right? Which basically means my prey isn't dead yet. Had it have been just one dog, probably not as severe. And if you look at most severe attacks, it's usually between more than one dog because each dog feeds off the other, and they're in what I call primal pack mode, killing it.
Yeah.
This is why when you hear one dog biting somebody, it's very rare that the person is near death, unless it was a professionally trained dog. And even then, a professionally trained dog, if the person goes down, if it's been done right, the dog stops. It's met its targets, it's subdued its assailant, right? Yeah. But these were not trained in this matter, so they were primal. Which basically, if you watch wolf videos of hunts or tigers or lions or cats, as long as their prey squirms, they don't stop till it's dead.
So if she would have
natural instinct.
So if she would have stopped moving?
Yeah.
So if you were to walk in there, let's just say.
Don't move.
If you were.
Number one, I would not have walked in, period.
Okay.
Because I'm experienced. Number two, if I were caught in that situation, don't move at all. But she was probably panicked, which, if you look at animals that are just about to be killed when they're hunted, they panic as well.
Yeah.
It adds to the frenzy. Not her fault, but it is what it is in analyzing what happened, right?
Yeah.
She panicked. She started squirming. If you watch protection dogs being trained, we squirm on purpose. It enhances bite, it enhances tenacity, and it enhances grip. Right?
Yep.
So if you stop moving, then the bite diminishes. The frenzy diminishes, and the animal or the predator has met its goal, killing.
Yeah.
She should have played dead. They might have bit her a few more times, and how is it hard not to squirm and scream when you're in that much pain? It isn't easy, but if you look at it, once she was down and stopped moving and the police approached, the dogs left her and went after the cops, because the cops were moving and invading as well.
Yeah.
Right?
So I have I'm doing the spay and neuter list for a county shelter, and there's a gal who has 2 pit bulls that run loose, and it happens a lot.
Loose where? All over the neighborhood or on the property?
Out in the country, across the countryside.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So I talked to her, and I didn't know this was going on, so I called her saying, hey, you need help spay and neuter. And she goes, well, my dog's... And I had to explain to her, she says, well, but my dogs are really wonderful on the property. I have people that come over and I go camping with them. We take them camping and they're off leash and they stick around my campsite and all this stuff. And I just don't understand. They're not that dangerous when they're running together loose. And I said, you don't know that. Yeah.
Something sparks them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, she's not there to stop them. And she says, well, they're pit bulls, and I think people are just afraid of pit bulls. And I said, well, if
that's enough reason to be careful, because if they get scared of pit bulls, that would spark the dogs to attack.
Yeah.
Even the nicest dog.
Well, and
it goes back to that reasoning, right?
Yeah. So those dogs don't feel like they have any. When they're on their own, they don't feel like they have anybody to stop them, so why not try something? Or I could be wrong. They could be total sweethearts running loose, but
they're still dogs, and if something sparks them, they're going to do what dogs do, especially two dogs together.
Yeah. Well, so I tell her, I said, if you weren't home and somebody came into your house, that would be bad. She says she's not tried it. They're not very old dogs, I don't think. But I don't think she's tried that. I'm like, you just can't. She can't crate them because they bust out of crates. She can't keep them in an outdoor pen because they bust out an outdoor pen. They chew it up.
These are not behaved animals. They're horrible.
Yeah,
You may think they're wonderful, but they're not. They're not willing to accept what she puts them in or has to say.
Yeah.
These are free range. I'm going to call them free range rude.
Yeah.
Which basically means that they could do just about anything they choose to do. So let's say they wander onto the neighbor's farm, and there's a little kid out there. Dogs are good with kids, but they may be good with your own kids. You don't know if they're good with other kids. And the kid starts screaming and running. Well, guess what? That kid now becomes prey, just simply by the movement, the action, and the tone of the voice and the screaming. You're going to trigger or something. That's going to end up real bad.
Yeah, and it's hard to get people to understand this. It's like, yeah, everybody's watched, the TV dog trainers, and they might listen to podcasts.
That's not training, right?
Yeah, and like in YouTube, there's a lot of YouTube dog trainers. They go online and they're like, well, I'm having this problem, that problem. They go and they research it on YouTube. It's like, yes, but still, it's not a script on YouTube, but
No.
people do change some things around for a YouTube video.
To make it look good.
I filmed
the video, and mine was real, but it was edited at the same time for certain shots that were right and weren't.
Yeah.
For what you're trying to represent, right?
I mean, how many dog trainers do a Facebook Live training a dog? Not many.
Nobody does. I was going to do it from the beginning of the steps all the way to the end and what it takes.
Yeah.
And as you know, I don't just train a dog. I got to start getting the people ready for it and get them to understand what it is and why their dog is behaving that way based on their conduct, not the dog's.
Yeah.
Because if you train a dog and the owner is the problem, you're just going to anger that dog even more.
Yeah.
That's been a known fact, right? So, these tragedies are happening because people are very grossly misconceiving what dogs really are. Dogs haven't changed. They are dogs. We changed, and our attitude towards them changed. I remember as a kid, I would walk the streets, and there were 4 or 5 strange dogs running around, and Venus the poodle was always in heat, and they'd be there. That's a time that it's very volatile. But they didn't do anything. Why? Because they were still treated like dogs. They had respect for people. You could shoo them away, and they would come back. And some of them, but you go to their house, and they were watchdogs, right? That's what dogs do naturally. We've changed our attitude about it. I mean, I don't get this. I don't know what happened or why, but I've been doing this 51 years, Lauren. And in my days when I was learning, there was none of this crap going on. But now it seems to be the norm.
Well, you tell a story about, well, I don't know if you want to talk about Leo is one of your mentors, and you would tell the story in your seminars about how you would jump his fence or whatever, sneak onto his property, and if you could get up next to him and tap on his shoulder, and he had a dog loose, and if you could reach him, he would be disappointed in the dog.
Correct. We used to do that to each other all the time. Now, him and I were professionals, and we thought it was humorous, and then it would be no different than if I would go to his place and his dog was out. If I can get to him at his kennel and make it past the dog, and I wasn't held in the driveway, he turned around and said to me, "That dog is for sale. He's no good." Well, rightfully so. He's supposed to protect property. This is the part that people don't understand.
But how old were
There's a
you?
fine line between-
How old were you when that happened?
I was in my 30s.
Oh, okay.
Right? I wasn't young. No, I was in my 30s. I had just moved to Beaton there, and he lived about 2 miles down the road. But just to make another story short about 2 dogs and this lady letting pit bulls run loose, I knew a guy in Pittsburgh who raised 2 male dogs together, and the dogs got along famously. Before that, there was a guy on the lower farm, because, Pittsburgh's full of hills, right?
Yep.
On the lower farm that had a Boston Terrier. Before the young male grew up, there was not a problem with that Boston Terrier barking at the shepherds up to the top of the hill. Until that young male grew up and him and his dad were together. This is part of that dog kills puppy story. I didn't write it all, right? And those 2 dogs went down the hill and killed that Boston. And they said to me, "I can't believe it," because as individuals, they didn't do it. I said, "No, as individuals, they won't. But when you put 2 dogs together, they go primal. And that Boston barking at them and running the side of the long rope that he was on was challenging them. And they went and did what dogs would naturally do based on primal instinct. No different than wolves howling at each other on their turf until one makes the wrong move, and then it becomes an all-out brawl. It's the same idea. We all understand what dogs are and what dogs may do, but we're forgetting one thing, primal instinct. And that is the part that is forgotten. Primal instinct, as you've seen it in my things that I constantly talk about, how a dog can go primal on you as opposed to being a social pet, or they can do both because their instinct hasn't changed. So if you set it up like 2 dogs self-regulating, running the property, and then leaving the property, they're out looking for new turf. Anything that challenges them, even the nicest dogs, because they're together, are going to do what dogs do. And that is take that turf over and kill whatever's in their way. That's it. Is it 100% of the time? No. Is it a 1% or 5% chance it could happen with a certain pair of dogs? Yes. So why are we taking these chances? Because when it does happen, it goes bad. And this is why you hear of police having to shoot 2 dogs in the neighborhood. I've seen videos where dogs are running loose, and all of a sudden they pick a target, and all 3 of the dogs are going after the person in the park.
Yeah.
Dogs peg people to bite no different than they peg animals. If they see something in that person that deems them as being weak in their eyes, they're going to go after it. That's just it. When I worked with a lot of people in rescue, I was spinning my wheels.
Yeah.
They just can't get their head wrapped around it. And then these people are making decisions with animals that are potentially going to be harmful. I have watched dogs that were euthanized that should not be euthanized. As a matter of fact, my last seminar in Toronto, I lost it on the rescue I was working with because they passed the doggy test. The dog was adopted out, and it was a wonderful dog, and now it was brought back for euthanasia because the people didn't do what was right, nor did they get the support, and it bit one of the owners. And I just looked at them all, and I said, you guys need to be better than I am. I have a certain type of clientele. You don't. Well, why are you putting out an animal with your lack of experience and then picking a person based on that lack of experience without realizing how people's conduct create bad dogs? I said, I can't do this with you guys anymore. This is the last seminar I'm doing. I'm done. You know about this.
Yeah, well, here's the problem. The experience, the lack of experience is becoming more and more prevalent. Like, I remember 20 years ago when I started into the whole rescue thing, it was very simple, and dogs weren't as Yeah, there were some, maybe back then.
There were some bad characters.
There were some bad
but
characters.
Not to the extent you're seeing now.
Well, and I think back then it was a different generation running the shelters, and I think maybe they just put them down and nobody heard anything. But now we've got the whole, save them all. Every dog is salvageable, but
it can be based on what are you doing to help it get there? Nothing.
Well, and
they're actually making it worse.
Even if, like, I say, okay, this dog needs a trainer. Tell me, if you apply for this dog, tell me what trainer that you have lined up. And I want to hear, what kind of techniques and what kind of experience. Is it a YouTube dog trainer that you found locally that has a YouTube channel and has Instagram and Facebook? But they're young kids going through college and they're now dog trainers. I'm like, yes, but this dog in particular, like those two dogs looked like high energy dogs, like, were they free fed? Did they have all these things that might trigger a dog? It's like they're in the home with the smell of the young children. They might have, if they had bowls of food that are full all the time, they looked a little heavy to me. If you got 3 young kids like that guy said he did, are they being walked every day? Probably not.
Right.
Probably not.
No.
And are they probably throw them in the car and take them to get a pup cup and get the Instagram and Facebook likes, and then they bring them home.
The whole mentality that is the problem.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
It's changed.
Yeah. And I look, I walk my dogs in my neighborhood. I try. It's to the point where I don't even want to walk them anymore. Now that COVID's happened.
I say to, and when I used to open my seminars, I used to ask people, so what is a dog? And everybody's first answer is, it's my companion. Really?
Yep.
That doesn't say what it is. That's what you want it to be.
My best
now
friend.
Let's talk about what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's an extension of our inabilities, and it's a predator. We use them to hunt. We use them to protect our property. We use them to track and find lost kids in the woods. We sit there and use them to herd sheep. That's what they are. They're predators based on the instincts that they have used to suit our purpose.
Well, wait a minute. You said we, but the we that you're talking about is what percent of the population of dog handlers? Like 1%?
10%, maybe even less.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to sound rude here. I could count on my hand right now, both hands, who I deem as being qualified dog trainers based on 52 years of experience. But there is 5,000 of them that shouldn't even be touching a dog.
Yeah.
And that's not me being arrogant or anything. I mean, hey, all power to anybody who has ability to handle a dog. But don't sit there and misguide people and then things go wrong.
Yeah.
Because you're responsible for that.
But here's the difference between dog trainers and rescues. Dog trainers can not take a customer. They can decide, oh, this person isn't going to, they're not going to do their homework, so I'm not going to waste my time. And a lot of dog trainers have a
quite often.
Well, a lot of dog trainers have a warranty on their training, and if you're not going to have any, if you're not going to put forth the effort, you're not going to give me $2,000 to do a board and train, and then you get the dog back, and then you cut it loose and expect it to do.
No, you got to get the people to follow through with it.
Right, and I had a lady.
That's where it is.
Real quick, remember the lady that came down to my booth one day, and she's like, "I'll have you know, I use this trainer that you talk about all the time, and did the boarded trainer thing, worked great, the facility and with them, but when I got the dog handed over, it's now worse." I was like, well, it was a German Shepherd.
That's why I don't board and train.
Well,
right?
but they did. She did come back, and I asked her. I said, "Did you do your homework?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, tell me what happened." She's like, "Well, my mom comes over, and the dog would growl and be nervous, but now it like lunges at her." I'm like, "Okay, well, this trainer could have people come in and out of their facility, and everything turned out."
The dog respects that trainer and doesn't respect the owner.
Right.
And trust them.
Well, and I told him, I said,
they didn't address the owner; they addressed the dog. That's where it's no good.
Yeah, but so I was addressing the owner. I said, "Listen, when they had people coming in their facility, in the front lobby, they had people coming in and stopping by all the time. Where was the dog? And she's like, probably either in a crate in the back or being worked with on leash. I said, okay, where's your dog? Right. When your mom comes over, where's your dog? She goes, well, at the door. Meeting him at the door. And then she says, I tell her, hold on a minute, and I get the dog and I put her back in my bedroom and I shut the door. I said, okay.
That's different.
So, but you don't put it in a crate in the bedroom. No, she leaves. And what happens when it's in the bedroom? Oh, she starts running wild. I said, well, she has all that space in the bedroom to build and build and build.
And she's agitated.
Yeah. And it's like, and you don't contain her like that trainer did. So you have to, if you pay a trainer, you have to do exactly what that trainer did with your dog to get those results. If you're not doing it, if you don't manage it the same way, it's going to get worse because the dog is now, like you've said before, it has felt leadership and now there's no leadership, and it's had a taste of freedom, and now it's in pure panic mode. So
correct.
I said, sorry. I mean, well, I said, you have to go back and start all over again. I mean, that's what you have to do. You put it in the crate, start all over again.
Classes, you got to work with that trainer and follow through with what you're told.
Well, I mean,
but the reality is that's not what people do.
No, I mean, I gave her another dog trainer's number. I said, well, here's another one that I like. However, if you don't do your homework, once again, it's gonna be the same story. It has nothing to do with the trainer. And and these people, these two dogs, I mean, I imagine if there was one, if I worked at the shelter or even the rescue that they worked with, I would have denied them because they had little kids and already had a large breed dog in the home. I would have asked if the dog got walked regularly, and I would like to look at that dog to see if it's trained.
But
and
they're smart, right?
But do they act like that lady with the German Shepherd? It's like, are you going to do what we did? Like, and that's what you've always told me. It's like, Lauren, just because you can trim this dog's toenails doesn't mean an adopter can, because you have the regiment, you have the structure, the space respect, and these people aren't going to have it because they have this fur baby and they're going to cut it loose.
But here's my issue here.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my facility, if you buy a dog from me or adopt a dog that I'm retiring, you got support. You can pick up the phone and have somebody skilled, plus myself or anybody that I work with, that'll advise you through and connect you and help you get it done so it's successful.
Yep.
As well as that there's return visits and free classes and whatever else to help that dog fit.
Yeah.
There's no reason why, if people in rescue got the skill to do it, that they couldn't do the same thing. I'll tell you something, if they did that, they'd have a waiting list.
Yeah.
And they could also make the right decisions on how to help that dog. What I'm thinking now is because of the flooding, and there has been over the last few years, the flooding is putting people in a desperate attempt to put dogs in homes so they don't put them down.
Right.
And that's a problem.
We are right on that.
Solely on that fabled safer pet test garbage.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that I have to talk about, but I can't do it now.
Yeah.
And, and as I've always said, just to briefly talk about it, just because a dog survived a safer pet test, you might actually be increasing its volatility, because every bit of that test is a threat.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people too. I said, everything to a dog is a confrontation. Absolutely everything. Right. If a dog is sitting on the couch and you go and you plop down on the couch next to the dog, that is a confrontation. If you're eating food out of the fridge or the crinkle bag and the dog comes running, that's a confrontation. People don't realize it's like every single teeny tiny thing, except the only difference is if you have a dog that tolerates it and is soft, or you have a dog that, like you said, you've had some students that the dog gets in the trash and they say, no, leave it, and the dog pins them up against the wall.
Right.
So...
That's because the dog has no respect for them. That's all. It's a different level of that dog's strength and courage that deems how it's going to deal with you, and most importantly, what you are presenting, right?
Yeah,
you present yourself as being to a dog.
Right.
That's it.
We are so lucky.
Subordinate or leader.
Yeah.
Right?
We're lucky that a lot of the dogs don't carry their weight, just as long as they get some, you know. But how many times have you heard, oh, you know, I left a steak on the counter or some chicken wings and the dogs got up there and ate it and then rushed to the vet? You know, it's like they're still going to help themselves. They don't care about you.
Right.
They're still going to help themselves.
Even the most well-trained dog is going to do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're...
Right. The difference is, does he repeat it or get into a battle over it?
Yeah.
Right? So, you remember Max?
Yep.
Max ate a 5-pound roast once sitting on the counter.
Wow.
I walked in the kitchen, and I went, what are you doing? And he dropped it right away and went and laid down.
Yeah.
From that point on, I said, no more kitchen for you. But how many people would go with a dog that powerful and say, drop it? The dog says, grips onto it even more, and then you try to get out of his mouth, he tears you apart. It's got to do with respect and nothing else.
And then they're surprised, and that's when we get the email at Thursday night at 11 p.m., and they send pictures of bite wounds. It's like, well, what happened? You know, and it's always mismanagement. It's always pushing the dog to the limit. It's always a confrontation. Yep. Like, I had somebody call me, a friend of, or a family member of one of my adopters, and she had adopted a beagle from a shelter over in Kentucky, and she says it would growl when it would get like a high value item, like if what the dog thought was high value, it would growl. And so she consulted a trainer that says, get a water bottle and tell it, you know, and spray it and say, leave it, whatever, and get the dog to back away from it, and then you take it. It's like, not only does the dog already think there's a confrontation, you're going to take this item that it wants, but you fought it and challenged it to get it away. So the next time it's going to get worse. And she goes, it did. I said, okay. She goes, and now it's like bleeding over into other parts of their life. Like the dog sleeps in the bed with them, and when they roll over at night, they wake up and they get cold and they grab the blankets to pull over their shoulder. The dog growls and is starting to lunge at him. I said, okay. And so they kicked the dog out of the bed and not kicked it out of the bed, but they said, you can't be in the bed anymore. You have to lay in this dog bed on the floor. Assigned a position. And the dog's like, I don't think so. It's like, I'm like, listen, you have got to hire a trainer.
Protection dog trainer Omri Geva to suit up, pretending to be an intruder.
Good, stay.
Rhonda Slavich of Aloha says Toby, her miniature Australian Shepherd, is more aggressive than Echo, her pit bull.
And I think Echo will look, go back to the couch and sit down, and I think Toby will be the one that will jump up and down and bark and bark and bark.
Was she right? After strapping our final camera on Omri, he set out to see for himself.
Hi, babies. Hi.
Not only did Echo and Toby hardly bark, they greeted Omri like their long-lost friend.
What?
They're wagging their tail.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by this?
Yes.
Bye. Thank you.
With very little resistance, Omri was able to walk out, fake stealing several items.
Got some good stuff.
It didn't go so well.
Disappointing?
Yeah.
If I was a real burglar, I think in plain clothes, I don't think that they would have done anything.
So we sent Omri back to see if Toby and Echo would act differently if her grandson Trenton was inside.
Come on, kiddo.
But they greeted him happily and didn't even mind when Trenton and our intruder walked out the door together.
My possessions could be replaced, but if somebody took Trenton, he couldn't be replaced.
Now we go to Portland.
I'm looking to see almost like their facial expressions in a way.
John Hickman and Lauren Percario are curious to see what Truffles, their pit bull, and Chiba, their Vizsla, would do.
Okay, here we go.
The second Omri walked in the door,
Hi, babies. Hi.
he easily led both dogs outside.
Let's go outside. Let's go outside, babies.
And was able to steal cell phones and a wallet.
This one's yours, and this one's probably yours.
But the second time around, when Lauren and her son were inside, Chiba didn't put up much of a fight.
You better get out of here.
But did stay by Mom's side to protect her.
A little surprised, but you know.
So far, We're 0 for 2.
I think they're going to the dog door.
Will our last family be any different?
Stay.
The LeBruns from Gresham are especially curious to see what their dogs would do, having been victims of theft. Someone stole 2 of their expensive bikes.
Someone just stole it. Yeah. You guys ready to see what happened? Ready.
Hi, babies.
Some barks, then silence as they smell the intruder. But then, non-stop barking once Omri starts walking around, especially by Dallas, their Malshi. Dallas jumps impressively from couch to couch to let Omri know he's not welcome.
And out the back door.
But unlike Riley, Dallas refused to go outside and tried to stop Omri as much as possible. Until, that is, he called Dallas's bluff.
Oh, no. Disappointed? A little bit. Yeah, disappointed that we could have just lost everything in our home.
Bye, puppies.
But before you write them off, take a look at how Dallas and Riley react when Denise was at home, when our fake intruder Omri walked in. You see Riley the boxer stepping up to the plate to protect her owner, even jumping on Omri to stop him.
A little different there. I told her to get him.
So the lesson is this.
If you want a dog that will really protect you, it's not about the breed.
It only took him a few minutes.
We're going to build up her confidence because
to begin laying the foundation to build that confidence.
You're a princess, yes you are.
A 4-year-old pit bull lab mix beloved by her owner, Kevin Peterson.
I believe she's gonna bite, but I'd like to find out.
The so-called home invasion goes down, and it sure looks terrifying. Ruby comes running to investigate.
Ruby, get him!
She's not so brave either. She runs away. Can you believe she's part pit bull?
Ruby was curious, she was worried about you, but she was not willing to take on the attacker.
Wearing a bite suit, looking even more menacing at the front door, our burglar solicits a bark, then enters. Hopper was trained for this, to literally take a bite out of crime. Alice was not.
Will it bite Joe, or will it let him take all the Christmas presents?
But hey, she's a German Shepherd, bred for guarding, right? Well, tail wagging, Alice springs into action.
Hey, go on, get out of here. Leave me alone. Go on. Come on, buddy. Nice doggy.
Turns out she's more about playing than protecting.
So it went a completely different way, and she's just enjoying being petted on me and loved on. She just wanted to come and say hi.
Alice is just one of more than 300 breeds of dogs.
Every dog is different.
Then there are the countless mixed breeds. Together, dogs small, medium, large, and extra large. We put them to the test. If there's strength in numbers, we have the tag team of Andre the Giant and Pablo Juan, a Chihuahua.
I think they'll be pretty rough.
1-2 punch. Danger trying to enter. Only Andre emerges from the basement to investigate, stunned. And almost falling over, Andre sounds the alarm. But he doesn't bite, not even the hand that pets him.
Good doggy.
Andre chaperones our intruder throughout the house and doesn't attack. What can one Chihuahua do?
Hey, buddy.
When the other is hiding the whole time downstairs. Andre disappointed. And so is Mom.
Well, you did terrible, Andre.
Moving up in size.
American Staffordshire Terrier.
And weight.
She's 60 pounds of muscle.
June does exactly what Daddy thought she would.
She's not supposed to bark.
No bark.
What's going on?
But yes. Rub my chest and belly.
Yeah.
Then June actually shows Joe around. The living room and kitchen downstairs and upstairs to the bedrooms.
She was my buddy while I was in there. Pretty much do whatever I wanted. She just followed me around the whole time.
Yep. I gave her specific instruction to protect the TV.
Next,
We love you.
the pit mix, Blue.
He graduated from puppy school, so he should be well trained. Because of that, he's Mr. Blue now.
A stranger at the door, Blue is seeing red. But Joe eventually gets the green light to come in. It's a colorful encounter, while Blue is definitely mad. Brave, not so much. As Joe goes through the house, twice Blue runs to the door, barking for help. Still, he's been the best so far.
There we go.
Salute. I love you.
Blue's not a good security system then.
Not right now, no. I would look into something a little bit more.
You want more? How about something great?
We have a Great Dane named Remy.
Remy is the big dog, but Piper is in charge. Only Piper uses her pipes.
Hey, huh?
And no big surprise here, Remy is curious, but keeps her distance.
It's all right, come on.
And she's about as dangerous as a Great Danish.
They're good to cuddle with, but I don't think this one's protecting us at this point. So maybe some other training in the future.
Even training might not make Remy bite like Copper does. But at least she's big.
If you had a friendly dog that loved everybody and licked everybody and let everybody walk up to it and you wanted it social in front of the door and everything else without any training, how many people get upset when the dog doesn't do anything when someone breaks in?
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep.
And then on the other side of it, you got a dog that will stop people at the door, does its job, probably bites a burglar, and is deemed a hero. But then other dogs who are doing their job at the door, quotation marks, because they don't really know the difference between a friendly person and a bad person, are euthanized because of the injuries sustained. However, if the person was a burglar and those injuries were sustained, then you could bet every one of those dog owners wouldn't be disappointed at it.
No.
It's strange. People are losing the perspective of it all.
Well, I think people are wanting dogs to reason like humans.
Well, let's look at reasoning like humans. I got a video clip of a wolf hybrid that bit a kid in the dog park, a 6-year-old girl.
Yeah, this laminated poster was put up by the family of that little girl, doing everything they can to hopefully make this dog owner come forward. They say a wolf hybrid dog similar to this one right here in this poster attacked a little girl, and then they both ran off. But we must warn you, the images of the injuries of that little girl are graphic. 6-year-old Chloe Sunder is slowly starting to become comfortable around dogs again.
This dog come out of nowhere.
Chloe was enjoying a March afternoon at the dog park with her grandma and aunt, but things turned horrific quickly.
She started running towards the obstacle course on the other side of this park, and my mom and I started walking towards there, and that's when the dog tackled her and started thrashing her.
I was thinking of he was like a wolf, and he's really mean, and he doesn't like kids.
The owner got her dog off of Chloe, but when she saw how badly Chloe was hurt, she took off.
I'm thinking maybe she's putting the dog away so that we can exchange information or something like that.
A witness was able to briefly note down a Utah license plate number. In the meantime, an ambulance took Chloe away.
My daughter was screaming and crying, and never seen her behave like that before.
They cleaned my owies, and then they give me like free needles.
Chloe's mom says because there were no vaccine records of the dog, Chloe had to go through several rounds of rabies vaccines.
You're a brave girl. I'm really tough.
In the meantime, they have a message for the owner of this dog.
You're responsible for your animals, and especially when they're violent, and I can't believe like an adult would just walk away from a child being injured like that.
Well, where is this mentality? Who in their right mind would bring a child to a dog park with a bunch of dogs running around? I don't care if it's a wolf hybrid. That's a given. But in a general consensus, without truly knowing whether those dogs are all good with children, whether those dogs are properly controlled and trained, which is far from it. So the mentality of this is all dogs are friendly. Crazy. This is why people are getting hurt. The mother to that kid that was bit in the dog park should be equally accountable for being an irresponsible mom, no bad difference than the person who owned the dog. Why do we have dog parks? Well, everybody everybody goes, it's a place for us to run. Well, it's a fenced-in, controlled area for people who go there who have dogs that are not in control and are a menace to the public. That's why those things exist. No other reason. I grew up with no dog parks. Nobody got bit. So what is it then? You know, I've been in the security dog business for a long time. We're now getting guard dogs or security dogs that are just out and out aggressive that are in this pattern. Spoiled, pampered, gone to dog parks, or raised with another dog, running loose in the backyard, absolutely zero obedience training. Oh God, I could think of 100 dogs like that. I was looking for a couple of Malinois crosses for my company before I closed it, and there was a whole slew of them in rescue that I could have pecked. Every one of them had bitten somebody. We got this guy who's trying to show people on the first video that your dogs are not security dogs. Well, no, they're not supposed to be, because that's not why people bought them. They've raised and socialized them reasonably decent. People walk in and out of the door. They're doing all of this stuff. Most of the dogs seem decent. They look pretty well treated, well and undamaged. Now, under pressure, they would probably buckle, which shows when somebody walks in the house. But then he's trying to compare it to somebody who, like his Malinois in the video, that is a guard dog that'll amputate an arm. Well, what are you promoting here?
Yeah.
Without any education as to what this really happens in a small little video clip. That was purely done to sell. The female shepherd that sat in the chair was a 9-month-old, maybe a year-old puppy. If you got a puppy at 9 or 10 months old that's guarding your house, you got a problem. It's not a good dog. It's an aggressive dog. At the same time, I got fat, overweight dogs that are sitting and being coddled on the couch, and they've never seen anything really stressful or bad in their lives. How do you expect them to react when someone walks in the door? How many other people are walking in the door at any given time? So those dogs were raised not to be protection dogs. Now, there's a balance. If you know what you're doing, and I happen to know what I'm doing, where I have dogs that are absolutely social and wonderful and the whole bit, and people walk in and out, but when the door is closed, you're not getting in my house. 25 years of being here, I don't even have keys to my house. My door's wide open. No one walks into my property.
Well, also, those people, like in the second video, they wanted to teach their dogs protection. It's like, well, okay, hopefully that trainer is going to teach them the off switch and how to manage a dog that's been taught, has been built up to bite somebody. Hopefully they manage it different and not treat it like a pet, because it's not a pet anymore.
Only a dog that has an off switch and is properly trained is you've got to be a strong handler.
Yeah.
And a disciplined handler, and none of those people in the videos are those.
No.
No, and if that trainer, in quotation marks, were to train a dog in protection, he'd be asking for a whole lot of trouble simply because the people are not capable of handling a dog like that.
Yeah.
I stopped protection training dogs for people simply because the mentality of people has changed, and I refuse to train something that could be absolutely a wonderful asset and turn it into a very dangerous animal. Forget it. I won't do it anymore.
Well, even that boxer towards the end, I don't know if you made it all the way to that part where she's standing out in the driveway and he's walking up and running away, and it was lunge on the leash. Hello, that's everybody with a dog on a leash. It's like, I mean, if anything, he just proved how you make a dog reactive on leash.
You have to watch the posturing and the walking in of that person who walked into the house.
Yeah, confident.
He's a very intimidating, on the second video, individual. He's confident.
Mm-hmm.
He's got no fear about him whatsoever. There's zero edgy movements about him. You know, now, of course, he's rattling the lock and everything else, okay. But that sounds no different than someone trying to come in the house through the door. What happens if you try to enter the window? Right?
Yeah.
Break the window. Now, make it real and see what happens.
Yeah.
Most like dogs would run into the corner of the couch and hide under the couch. But that's how they were raised, to be house pets. There's a fine balance, and part of it is genetics, but the majority of it's upbringing. Those dogs that ate that girl probably had excellent, wonderful protection qualities, but were grossly mishandled and most likely were damaged.
The guy in the second video, if he walked in versus her, what do you think would happen? Do you think they'd take him out?
No. They would bite him, but they wouldn't take him out like that. He could handle himself. But I just don't get the irony of this, because they're doing video clips of showing what your dog will or won't do. But where's the educational part that discusses why these dogs didn't do it and why maybe they could do it, and some of the upbringing? But no, it's all about entertainment. And that's where training on television has gone. Pure entertainment.
Well, how about the fact that these are both news stories? One was Channel 11 here locally. They do those stories, and it makes people watch those dog trainers come in, and they're going to do it at home and go, oh, well, I'm going to test my dog, and if not, I'm going to go and watch how he did that in the driveway. It's like dumb, just dumb.
In my books, it's become an irresponsible holiday season based on promoting gimmicks and images, or an image of a trainer to show how great they are. But very little of it truly depends on the education of it all.
Yeah.
I'm talking as a trainer myself. When I had people who wanted to protection train their dogs, and I did a lot of it in the 90s and the early 2000s, I used to interview people. And I could see whether they were capable of having something like that or not. And if they didn't, I'd turn them away. But then what you heard was, down the street, somebody else is doing it, which brings me to a quick story here that I'll tell you about. It was a shepherd pup of mine, had to be about 93. A guy named Joe bought him. Oh, I want this big, powerful protection dog. I'm always away from work and everything else, and at work, and I'm home alone with my wife. They're home alone, and I want this dog to protect him. I said, okay. This dog has a protective instinct. It's this dog here specifically because I used to breed for it. And I said, but you need to do extensive training. Then I started to look at the guy's attitude. And in the beginning, he was all right. He started to listen to me. But then he got the attitude of needing the big, powerful dog. So one day he went to a trainer down the road, who I knew, who was nowhere even remotely qualified of understanding stability in dogs. I used to go to his house, and he had Connie Corsos, and he'd tell them to shut up, and they would just get more upset and want to kill me just from sitting in their driveway. So what happens? I find out he goes there to get his dog protection trained because I turned him down. So one day I get a phone call. You ready for this? They had a baby sitting in a bassinet on the picnic table. Family barbecue. It must have gone on for about 2 hours. Everything was fine. Dog was fine. He was being petted by everybody. Not a problem. Everything was good because he did raise a dog to be social. We did that. Until the brother-in-law and the sister-in-law, a married couple, started playing with those squirt guns. You know those squirt guns that you hook those up to?
Yep.
And they were spraying each other, and then one of them ran near the baby. And the dog was laying under the picnic table.
Uh-oh.
Yes, That dog got out from under that table because he heard the baby cry because some water hit it. He took out the husband, both arms, turned around, and took the leg out on the sister-in-law.
Wow.
That's how quick a dog can change based on circumstances. So, putting a news clip of dogs walking a little brick and making it a lighthearted situation when you have this absolute disasters based on lack of discipline, lack of instruction, and unqualified people. And I'm not saying the people that did those commercials or those clips were unqualified, but I'm talking in a general consensus. Based on what I saw, they were qualified people, okay? Just by their demeanor, you can tell that they knew what they were doing. And this is why, and a trainer like myself knows how to get a dog not to bite them. He also knows how to enhance a dog's protection and strength to do it properly. Those guys that were on those videos were doing it. But the irony of this all is that these very people who were upset about their dogs not protecting their home would be equally upset if their dog was barking at the door and their Uncle Bob came to visit at Christmas time. You can't have it both ways.
Well, as far as
you have the right control, not the wrong sentiment.
Well, the story that you just told, why did they have that dog out underneath the picnic table when they had family over?
Irresponsible, stupid people.
Yeah, it's
Because
like, put it up.
when my boys were born, there was a Doberman living next door when I had a tenant, and it was Bandit. He was a marvelous, marvelous dog. And he was my assistant's dog, and a friend of mine who was a fellow breeder, Florin was his name, had this dog. He actually sold this dog for $40,000. Anyway, when Liam was born, Bandit used to always go under his crib and lay there. Because Bandit was just as much as he was one of the dogs that hung around here when we were training. I could walk in, no problem. Pick up Liam, not a problem. You know, Kim could walk in and pick up and mess with Liam, and he'd go, hey, Bandit, get out of like one outside. And I remember one day when my brother tried to enter the bedroom. Now, Bandit was a good dog. He didn't attack him, but he sat under that crib snarling. That's the problem that people don't understand, is that dogs will change according to circumstances and situations. Whereas this guy thinks the dogs were all friendly and everything else. They most likely were. But that what happened to that girl. The situation changed when she walked in the door on her own. That's the part that people aren't understanding. And that's that human mentality. I'm a good guy. I don't go around assaulting people. I'm not a guy you should push around. But I'm not going to sit there and clobber you. And if a situation changes, I'm human. I'm going to come up with the rational mind and come up with a solution. Dogs don't work that way.
Yeah.
So it's this human sentiment, this human thought. I call these people the soccer moms of dogs. You got a loser dog. You're setting up a loser situation, but you want everybody to like them because you do. Wrong. 100% wrong.
Well, that little fluffy dog in that one story, I mean, she was wanting that little, what is that, Maltese or Maltipoo or whatever it was. She wanted it to bite.
Yeah, until he pressured her, well, sure.
But then I'm like, hey, that's great. If I can find a home for Rosie that wants her to bite people and accept that she's that way, then great.
Right.
But nobody wants a dog like that, really.
No, they want a dog that licks fingers and everything else, no matter what happens. But then when they're sleeping at night, they want that dog to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way.
They do make, I mean, dogs,
Yes, I have lots of them, but it's a specific upbringing that you get that balance.
Yeah, but nobody knows how to do that. A lot of people have gotten COVID puppies and they think, oh, well, it'll just do that naturally. No.
Bastards is waiting to happen.
Yeah.
You know, my dogs know the difference. You know, to this day, I tell everybody, do not get out of your car if I'm not outside. It doesn't mean that they're all going to eat you for supper. What I worry about is people that make a wrong move. Because they're not educated. They start flaring their arms. They start bending down, wanting to pet the dog and hug it and whatever else. And they get stupid people like that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually people who have problem dogs that have that attitude about dogs.
Yeah.
Every single time. I got somebody here that completely destroyed their puppy on Saturday. It's shy and afraid of everything. They see me walking around with 3 loose shepherds, and they just get out of their car. Now, I have control. I go, hey, that's enough, guys. Go to your kennels, and they go. But those same people would probably go to a neighbor's house who's doing the same thing, and that person may not have control. Now it goes ugly. Right?
Yeah. So you see all those videos of delivery drivers putting packages on the front porch, and the dog's busting a hole out of the window or taking off. There's video of a dog that has a hold of a United States Postal Service, letter carrier, would not let go. Everybody around was they were hitting him with a stick. None of it was working.
Tormented by the innocently enough, the postman dropping something off, he barks and he leaves. That's the same operation that we do to agitate dogs. So what they created is the equivalent of the Malinois in that video, without even realizing it. The problem is that Malinois is controlled. Their dogs are doing it willy-nilly, and they're setting it up to happen because of the position and the management of the animals that they have. You know, in my house, I have 2 crates with Ranger. Ranger's either downstairs, so as soon as you open the door, the first thing you're going to face is this crate. Right?
Yep.
The second thing that you see is there's a crate upstairs in the front door, so if anybody comes through the front door and we're not home, we may put them either where. I might have 2 dogs in because I got no locks in my house. And sure enough, they go absolutely ballistic. But here's the difference. When Ranger's loose in the house, and I touch that door handle, he automatically goes back from the door and lays in the living room. If I'm in the house, and I'm working, and we're watching TV, and someone knocks on the door, you don't see Ranger running to the door going ballistic. I taught him not to do that, simply because I know what happens in the wrong sense. So then one day, my dad, who's 85 years old or 90 years old, is going to walk in the front door. I got my dog who's just been used to people barking, and guess what's going to happen to my old man because I'm not watching.
Yeah.
So no.
Yeah.
Those are all about boundaries and turf. When you're home, your dog does not go to the window and bark. It does not. It can run to the door and bark, but the minute you go there, it's supposed to sit back. What you have are people who struggle. You know, it would be interesting to know on that girl that was mauled, where she met the dogs, which means, were the dogs in another room and then she came in the living room and they were let out to meet her? Or was the guy holding them in the doorway when she walked in? I highly doubt it would have been that one, because you would see a very different pattern.
Yeah. Well, here's what I want to know. The rescue or shelter, whoever adopted those dogs out, they couldn't possibly not know that those dogs were like that or had that tendency. Now, were they puppies? Were they adults?
But see, what happens is, as individuals, they could have been great non-aggressive dogs under any circumstance. All you did was a video clip of the pit bull. But what happens when 2 dogs are together unregulated becomes a whole different ball of wax.
Well, I seriously doubt a rescue only had just that one dog as the one foster dog in the home.
Yeah.
They probably had other dogs like I do, and Loretta's my ambassador dog. I'm sure they had a pretty low-key dog, and they said, oh, well, this foster dog is good with other dogs because it plays with my dog. Adopted it out to a home with another dog, and they should have seen, assessed the 2 personalities, but...
Yeah, in a situation where people have more than one dog, and me as a trainer, I tell people that you got to train one dog at a time.
Yeah, people hate that saying.
And then they put them together. That doesn't mean they don't live together because it's regulated. I've got somebody that's doing that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what you'll see, because she's a good handler, but she just has a refusal to put dogs in their place when it needs to be. So the older dog gets a pat. The younger dog runs up, cuts them off, and growls at the older dog.
Yeah.
The older dog backs off.
Mm-hmm. It worked.
Now what's happening is the younger dog is becoming dominant. It's a female state. I can hold that dog, and anybody can walk up and pet her. The woman holds that dog, and that dog will kill you.
Yeah.
Now, when the dogs are both individualized, and the other one is not in the room, either or, what you'll see is the older dog is more confident and more social. And when you see the dog that's becoming the fake dominant, i.e. the dog that's sorting it out, that's the young female, when she comes in here and people want to walk up to a pet her, she'll let them, she'll even take a treat, but you can see how she completely appears lost because she's completely not in control.
Yeah.
So put them 2 together, and the dog walks across the yard, they're going to charge it. Individually, they mind their own business.
Right.
So the dynamic of 2 dogs, unregulated, also changes it. So I don't know what the rescue did. They might have turned out okay, but through the time of those 2 dogs being together, no training, no proper management and everything else, that was a ticking time bomb. It would have been just a matter of time before they both might have started correcting the children, even though they were good with kids in the beginning. Because if you study older canines or wild canines, once a certain cub gets a certain age, they start putting it in its place. Dogs have been known to do that. The target bites for children is between the ages of 4 and 9 years old.
Well, what really bothers me is the more I do this, the more these stories happen, and I research and I research and I research and I ask questions, the more I get really nervous about, I don't want to adopt a dog out to somebody. And what's happening today is you've got the Gen X, my generation, and I've talked about this, was very practical. It's like we were raised, the same. Like, don't touch the dog, don't get in its face. You get in its face and it bites you, well, you deserved it. But we're now becoming grandparents, and we're getting our kids' dogs dumped on us because things happen. Babies are coming along, grandkids, whatever. But even that generation, the ones that do hold on to their dogs, they're busy with their children. I don't know how somebody has a newborn baby and has time for a dog. I just don't get it.
We did it, but I was the trainer and she was the mom.
Yeah, but
How we made it work, but my dogs were all crated.
Yeah, but
and I would bring them in and specifically work the training, which, if you recall, when Max was alive, he belonged to the boys. And when they were playing in that park, and remember when their dad went there to try to get his son, it didn't happen. I had to stop the seminar and go get the dog.
yeah.
Right.
Well, but you've got the mother and the father working. The kids are in school. The kids are gone to ballparks, whatever, and so they already have a dog. The ones that actually make it through giving birth and maintaining their dog ownership instead of dumping it on their parents. They say, "Oh, well, my dog's home alone by itself, so I'm going to go get a second one." And that right there is what causes the self-regulating of the pair.
Well, I got a rude awakening when I started learning, when I started my first protection segment and learning how to be a protection trainer. When a dog came out and I was an 18-year-old pompous little ass, I could put any dog in his ass, and this dog grabbed me and threw me around like I was nothing. I learned a whole new respect for dogs. People who don't experience that kind of stuff in the training world could never know what the true capacity of a pissed off dog is. And most importantly, we learn how to piss them off, but we also learn how not to.
Yeah.
So you're right. Good trainers have protection backgrounds. Every one of them.
Right.
Male or female, right? No matter. You need to learn the power of a dog in order to respect a dog. Then you'll see it for what it is, as opposed to what you want it to be. What you want it to be is what you got to make it, but you need to see what it is first. And this is where it's gone wrong, because nobody's seen dogs what they are.
Right.
They're forgotten. Right? It's always the denial of reality, because the reality may not always be comfortable, and that doesn't please our souls. Well, too bad, too sad, because that's not how it works. Right?
Yeah.
Yep. All right, I got to get to work.
All right, I'll see you. Thanks.
Talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.